minus 1 minute. T minus 50 seconds. T minus 40 seconds. T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Walk to Westport.
Like, I don't know how much time you have, but I'd love to talk genetics and the stuff that you're doing. I don't
Yes,
know if you want to
let's
save that
do
for
that.
part 2 or if you've got time today.
Dude, I
'Cause,
got time,
yeah,
brother. Like, we can
cool.
keep going. We're into it 2.5 hours and still holding strong. So I'm ready to roll all day. And I actually have a bunch of like seed packs and stuff next to me that we can do giveaways in the future if you want. Like,
Awesome.
I got a bunch of genetics, and as far as the genetics side, in 2010 was when I was given my first couple of cuts. I had been growing out stuff that I'd gotten from a buddy. Long story short, he had an issue, had to bring a bunch of stuff to my buddy's house to dry. Well, he left a tray of clones there. He'd also dumped off like 20 bales of Sungrow number 4, lights, ballast, nutrition, and he was storing it in my garage in my apartments. And we'd gone to a buddy's house to dry all this shit for like a week and a half. Well, he had left clones out at my buddy's house. My buddy calls me. He's like, dude, you need to get these plants out of here. My parents are coming and I've got them hidden out back. And I'm like, oh shit, he left those clones. So I go get them. I get a bale of dirt out of my garage, bring it up to my apartment, set up a light in my closet, transplant them the best I know how, because I watched my mommy garden when I was younger. And they start taking off and getting bigger. He comes over to my house. He's like, oh my God, is that the haze in the cough? It was Shanti Baba's cut of super silver haze that his dad had gotten from somebody, big dollars back in whatever day. And so that was literally how I started growing. I'd never grown weed before. My buddy had a situation. I went and saved the clones. I put them in my closet, and he was like, "Can I get a copy of each?" And I was like, "I wasn't going to grow them. I just wanted to save them for you." And it was like a big deal, right? His dad didn't want to lose those cuts, and so I'd gotten a few rounds in, and then I met Sub. And then right after that, my name kind of did blow up locally. And so a buddy of mine gave me Blue Dream, Raspberry Kush, and Seattle Sour Kush, which is the Chem 4 headband. A lot of my breeding these days is constantly trying to chase Chem 4 headband. And so I've built, I didn't really breed much when I was with Sub. I made a couple of crosses back in the day. And then when I started working with Gage Green around 2014, the end of, I had run a bunch of seeds for Sub, bunch of seeds for Gage. I mean, I went through probably 50 or 60 different strains for each outfit and posted them all over Instagram, blah, blah, blah. But I only had the one real gas cut, which is a Seattle Sour Kush. And I'd seen lemon and cherry and grape and orange nonstop at TGA. And I was so burnt out on it after a while. And then we got Forum cookies in 2013.
Okay.
So I had Seattle Sour Kush and I had cookies, and then I got an OG cut, and I was just in love with the gas. I'm sure I'd smoked it earlier in my life, but all of a sudden to get the gas, right? Like I'd smoke sour diesel here and there, probably didn't know what it was at the time. And
Right.
so I have always, like, people always ask me, what's your favorite strain? Chem 4 headband, right out the gate. Nothing else ever enters my mind. That is the one. Smoked it last night and it was like the first time all over again. So I breed with a lot of OG Kush and Chem Dog and Sour Diesel. I have some cookie crosses because regardless of what people say, Thin Mint and Forum cookies are absolute fire. Like the way they smoke, the way they smell, the way they taste is awesome. I breed with Cotton Candy Kush Blue Dream. I breed with Cherry Pie and Sherb. I breed with Trinity. But a lot of OGs and sour diesels and chems. And I've been very fortunate, knowing Subcool and working with Gage and then later meeting JJ from Top Dog. So I had these acquaintances and people, took me seriously. I showed up when I was supposed to. I kept my mouth shut. I did the work, and so I ended up getting access to all of these cuts that definitely you would have to spend more time or know somebody or be born into a family that was cultivating already. And so like towards the end of my work with Gage Green, they had moved from the Bay Area, north of the Bay Area, and they were looking for a new home. The industry was changing, they were looking to blow up. So I started breeding some stuff for the group, and I'd found a Mendo Breath F2 male that I'd kept around for a year and a half, put it through whatever I could to just, because I didn't know a lot about males at the time.
Right.
And so I started making some crosses with Mendo Breath for us. And then I realized that there's not a lot of difference between being able to pick a good male and a good female. It's just experience with plants and knowing what not to look for. And without going too deep into it, the best thing I can say about males is you don't want one that ever shows any kind of clusters in veg, because that's the kind of male that's going to lead to a herm, because he's the drunk dude at the party trying to pick up any chick he can. You want the well-dressed man in the tuxedo drinking scotch neat in the corner, observing the talent before he rushes into the field. So
Nice.
I started breeding, and I immediately started to try and create back to that Seattle Sour Kush. That Chem 4 headband flavor has just been my driver. And so there's a lot of stuff that has that lineage in it. For the newcomer, they might think some of my breeding looks really repetitive, but there's a difference between Triangle Kush and True OG and Kosher Kush and Godfather OG and Sour Diesel and Chem 91 to the experienced user, right? Those flavors might be nuanced difference. They're all gas, but there's a big difference between Sour Diesel and Chem 91 and True OG. Inexperienced users might not see or smell or taste the definitive nuance, but that became something that was super important to me. And in the times that I worked with, like when I was working with Gage, they bred with different OGs and stuff, and someone would come to the booth and say, hey, do you got anything with this OG? And they'd be like, no, we use this one. They're like, oh man, because I really love that one. And so I didn't just try and hit any OG I could. I definitely was lucky enough to work with guys that had big money and had all these OG cuts. And so I got to see SFV and Fire OG and SoCal OGs and the gamut of them. We had 20 different varieties of OG in one room. So I got to like look through a lot of this stuff pretty early on and make my decision as far as like what I wanted around, what I wanted to make. And like I'll just grab a random pack, not looking. So this is Ice Bubba. This is pre 98 Bubba Kush crossed to something called Dwamish Diesel. It's like a menthol vanilla Bubba Kush, right? Way stronger than Bubba, produces better, more resin. Bubba can be kind of a bitch if you're not willing to hit her with some pretty crazy phosphorus. And so I breed a lot of different stuff, but I am a gas man. And so the sour diesels, Chem 91, Chem 4, not a huge fan of Chem D, but almost every OG outside of the lemony ones I love. And that's been a huge part of my breeding, is trying to like recapture that stuff that we came across when we were kids, and which is awesome that I met Gabby recently, because obviously he's intertwined into all that kind of stuff. And I have a bunch of cuts and he has a bunch of cuts. In fact, I just gifted him Subcool's cut of UK cheese. Something I've held on to for
that's
12 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And cheese is awesome. So we breed with cheese and all these old school cuts. And I think that as everything becomes so hybridized, like everything looks like permanent marker or jealousy these days. And, people go through the business crazes of things like Skittles, and while they're all really amazing cuts, it's just like some things become so funneled towards one thing that a lot of the old school stuff just seems to kind of disappear into the past. And so when people find out that I still hold Santa Cruz Blue Dream, or that I hold like real cherry pie, or I have True OG, or I have kosher Kush or cheese, they're just like, wow.
Yeah.
So, preservation is a big part of what we do. And mind you, I'd love to be into tissue culture at one point. We use Suffoil X as our IPPM, and
Okay.
we keep things clean. And, it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work. And
And
breeding
that's
for me is just one of those things. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's one thing I was curious about too, because you're mentioning some of these originals you have, and yes, thank you for doing the preservation, because a lot of these things do get lost to time. That's another subject, but you do have these clones on a menu on a website, which is why you
Yeah.
probably brought up the Suffoil X, because that's always something I like to ask of people who do clones. It's like, provenance is usually one of the first things we get to, because that's so important. And I want to ask you here in a minute, differences between the different OGs, because I'm convinced that most people don't really know a lot of times what a real OG is, or a real chem,
Right.
or even real Skittles for that matter, because the name game is so strong that it's been
Well,
muddied over the
yep.
past decade, 15 years, to where you can actually go back to someone like you who's had them for that long. You're like, okay, I feel a little bit more confident. Again, the whole provenance thing. But the point, the
Yep.
Suffoil X is, I always like to ask, people who do clones, how are you going to prevent me from getting bugs? How are you not going to be that guy? So
Right.
you use Suffoil Exos,
Especially
you just dunk, or
never dunk, because it can clog the stomata and literally
okay,
cause the plant to die off. So what we do is we use 60 milliliters per gallon of Suffoil X to water. Suffoil X is a mineral spirit, so it's important to wear like a painter's respirator when, at least when you're mixing it raw into water. I would even recommend it if you're new to it, like spraying it. There's a difference between plants and humans. We have this very sensitive pulmonary or respiratory system that plants don't really have. And plants fucking love Suffoil. Now, as somebody that, sells clones or seeds and you're breeding, I've gotten russets before, like 7 years ago, and that's what led us to Suffoil. And we had heard about it from Suzanne, the bug lady, right? Because she's like, look, predator mites are great, but they're supposed to be there to stifle progress of a colony, right? They are not there to wipe out an infestation.
right,
So
right,
she had this article that was talking about treating with Suffoil every 3 days for three treatments, and then moving it to like a week, and then to like a month, and then keeping on it every month. And because I'd gotten this cut of sour diesel from a buddy who was like, please, can you hold on to this cut? I'm going to stop growing for a while. And it had russets. And
dude,
he'd even given it, so he lived in Southern Oregon. He'd given it to a buddy of mine that I vetted for in Portland, and then he brought it to me. Cost my buddy upwards of 60 grand with all the crops that he lost from the russet mites. I get it to my house. I take a tray full of clones and like half tray of the sour and then other stuff. One sour diesel roots. I'm like, oh, maybe just who knows. Take it upstairs, put it with my other clones. 2 weeks later, we start seeing brown spots on the top of the shoots, and I'm like, what the fuck? And so we do some studying. We buy some little scope mics for our phones, and we're like, what the fuck? And I call my buddy. I'm like, hey, is it possible there's russet mites on that sour? He's like, oh yeah, most definitely.
what?
And I didn't even know what to say. I'm like, what do you mean? Yeah, most definitely. I'm like, you gave me a dirty plant without like giving me any heads up. He's like, I just figured you knew how to deal with it. I was like, well, it showed up happy and green. He's like, yeah, that one just came out of one of the spots that was cleaner. I'm like, you put an ER
Oh
on that.
my
That doesn't mean that
God.
it's so. We end up getting to the situation where everything at my nursery that's completely, my garden that I flower at's an hour away. So that
Okay.
place is fine. But we get into Suffoil X, and so we start treating the plants. Everything starts to come back fast. And cookies, right? Forum cookies that was just been through other hands and we'd had it for a couple of years. We hit it with Suff Oil. All of a sudden, it starts looking like a seedling again. Like the leaves are way
Huh.
more expressive. The whole plant's starting to take on a different nature. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I'd used Azamaxes and different things that we had used when we would take in a clone. But after learning about Suff Oil X, and I always call it IPPM, Integrated Pest and Pathogen Management,
There we
we've
go.
gotten clones that were just riddled with PM. And over 6 months to a year, after continuously treating and taking new cuts and treating them and new cuts, we had wiped it out. And tissue culture obviously is a way to do that, but Suff Oil X is really effective, like really effective. And if you're regular with it, I've taken cuts that, particular OG cuts or even something like Skittles that takes 21 days to root. Well, if I'm feeding silica, like Aptus Facilitor is the brand I use. If I'm feeding silica and adding mineral and spraying with Suff Oil once a month or every 20 days, dude, those mother cuts that were problematic never show that problem again. And after a while, they start to
Wow.
almost reset because they're no longer fighting that bullshit, especially if they're in
Right.
amended soil and you can bioremediate,
Mhm.
but we've collected genetics for a long time and taken in clones from various people throughout the industry. And sometimes you get something like I had a buddy who was like, dude, I've got mites on these clones, but they're fully rooted. I was like, what kind of mites? He's like, spider mites. I was like, fucking send them. They show up, we hit them with Suff Oil, the bugs are like, ah. And the way Suff Oil works is it's micronized oil, and mites breathe through their feet. So like in their little footsies is where their lung tube is. So they step in the
Wow.
Suff Oil and
That's crazy.
immediately clogs it. So suffocating oil is really common. It's also referred to as horticultural oil. There's another brand called Tritech, Tritek, that's decent, but Suff Oil is the bee's knees. And we knew a guy that worked in the agricultural sector, and he sells to huge farms, dude. And I mentioned Suff Oil to one time. He's like, "Oh, dude, it's the number one product I sell." And I was like, really?
Yeah.
He's like, dude, I sell fucking truckloads of Suff Oil X. It's like it is the most commonly used IPPM in all of agriculture, and it's allowed in organic gardening. It breaks down, and it's like, a lot of the hippies are like, petroleum, right? They're driving cross country in their cars bitching about petroleum.
Yeah.
But Suff Oil X is really, really incredible. Again, I suggest that you wear a painter's respirator just because it's mineral spirits. It
Good.
has like an alcoholic type nature to it. But 60 mils of Suff Oil X per gallon. And then I prefer to use, I don't have one in here, but like a little barber's pump sprayer because
Yep.
you can be accurate and intentional with that. I find when people are using pump sprayers or foggers, they're like, I'm going to treat this area when you should be thinking about, I'm going to treat this plant.
Yeah.
So
I've
Suff Oil X is amazing, and it's really helped us preserve and remediate cuts that were in danger and stuff that if we didn't save it, nobody would have it. Um, things like Godfather OG or Blue Dream or Cotton Candy Kush or some of these things that when I got them, they weren't in perfect shape. And I'm looking over at my nursery right now, and Triangle Kush, when she's healthy and happy, she rocks. But OGs, if they're not transplanted on time or overlit or overwatered, they get finicky and pissed right away. And
Well, please,
so,
please touch on that though. Please touch on like what are some of the differences between like different OGs, whether it's the
okay.
flavor profile or the morphology, because a lot of people again, it's almost a catch-all term.
Right,
It's
right.
like, oh,
So
it's
there's a
OG.
lot of like I consider OG and Kush kind of obviously to be the same thing. And when I was hanging out with so Josh D lived up here in Seattle for a while, and we would go visit occasionally, and I'd bring my Seattle sour Kush over, and he'd be like, "Dude, Spliff's got some OG sour." And I was like, "Well, there's not really OG in it." And he's like, "No, no, no, no. That's like our way of saying something's fire or kills or super dank, right? We call it OG." And so like I've grown, and a lot of people miss or rename stuff. So Josh Dog, Ghost OG, and Original OG Kush are all the same thing. Just like I'm willing to bet that Jew Gold and Skywalker OG G Cut are the same as those. They just got renamed by whoever had them, and Star Wars 1 comes out, and so they start naming stuff after that. But when we get into like some of the different OGs, so like straight OG is a little bit different than the true OG. The true OG is my favorite cut of all OGs because it is just straight OG Kush, and it's not as finicky as Ghost or Josh D. Triangle's got just a little hint of lemon, and that plant will grow a little bit more laterally once it starts and then move up. They all have about the same node spacing. SFVOG has almost this little itsy bitsy hint of tomato soup in the back of it, where Fire OG pulls that pine. And Fire OG has these big gleaming resin heads where like True OG or Josh D or Triangle, it almost looks like cookies where it's just these micro heads littered all over the flower. Then you get into things like Tahoe OG, which probably are like an OG Master Kush. And then you've got like the 93 Octane, the Master Kush, or the one that Not So Dog's looking for, the taller one, which I've seen in pictures. But then you get into things like Malibu Pure Kush, right? Which is like this earthy, gassy Afghani OG Kush type combination. And Kosher Kush, which I still hold from a 2010 seed stock, is like
DNA.
kerosene and gas, right? Really, really special. Godfather OG is very knobby, knuckly, kind of like cookies. It predates cookies, but not a huge yielder, not a small yielder, but done in 8 weeks and tastes like coffee and an OG Kush. And so there's like these nuances within each OG that make it special to that particular person, right? And so, and I'd collected all these OGs and light cuts. And so my goal was when I built a line to hunt a male that would be straight gas, no fruit, no purple, no influence that wasn't gas, right? It took me a long time to get there, probably 6 or 7 years. But then I would take my entire list of OGs and pollinate all of them. Because some people would be like, oh, cool, you got some Kush cuts, but I really love SFE, or I literally love Tahoe.
Mhm.
Sweet, I got you. You know, and that became a big part of my breeding because, again, back to the Chem 4 headband, the Seattle Sour Kush, that flavor, we'd gotten like, 10 different samples from a buddy of mine that was growing locally in Seattle. And he's like, just tell me, and if you like any of them, I'll shoot you the cut. And he had actually given us the most of Seattle Sour Kush, and so we rolled that one first. And my wife and I looked at each other and we're like, wow, that flavor is like, I can't wait to go to the garden tomorrow and smoke. I've got like
Wow.
10 grams left and I'm smoking it all tomorrow, guaranteed. And so, it was like a lot of this gas stuff was really important. And, I chased Chem 91 for years, dude. I got cut fished so many times and I paid good money
Yeah.
for it. And,
Oof.
people like, I got Chem 91. No, the fuck you don't. And
Yeah.
like so many cuts, I'd been out there looking for them and somebody'd see one of my videos and me over here pouting that I can't find this cut. And my buddy's like, oh, I'll give it to you. Like, fuck yeah, you will. That's awesome. So OG is really special too because it's got a little bit of lift to it. It's not like my Chem Ultra Cut or Chem D or dude, even Biscotti. You smoke Biscotti and you're just fucking ripped, So it was nice to have something in the OG variety that was very uplifting and clear-minded, and especially if it was clean, right? No extra nitrates or bullshit. Burns clean, smokes clean, smells and tastes perfect. There's nothing quite like that, And Kush is definitely very legendary, and I think a lot of people assume that they've had it. It's like I ask
Yeah.
in my lives a lot, how many of you guys have actually smoked Chem 91? Out of 40
It's
people,
hard.
like 3 or 4 people are like, I'm certain. And then you got all the people like, I smoked Chem 91 since I was 3 years old. And you're like, all right. But
Totally.
because I was so lucky to have the company that I kept, be it Subcool or Gage, or, I met Kyle Cushman early in my career and we were friends for a long time, or somebody like Crockett or, Sin City and I became friends early on.
Mhm.
So I had all these connections to people and I was able to get cuts and I started stocking them up and I fell in love with gas, and so that's why I would breed 6 or 7, 8, 10 different gas cuts to the same male because that male was gas and God forbid we ever lost the cut. Now I
Yeah.
could go back to my seed stock and find something that was close enough not to be able to pass it off as, but to be able to hold on to that flavor forever. So that really dictates a lot of my breeding. I don't chase the new hype shit because a lot of times, it's like when my buddies will come over and be like, dude, you got to hear this new song. It's so awesome. I'm like, probably not. Modern music is as confusing as modern cannabis. And so I've been Mr. Spliff of Cannabis since 2010 and 2011. I had 10 seconds to make up my name. Jinx Proof came over to my house to do a little video installment for the Weed Nerd Show for Subcool. And I got it all set up before they got there. And we're literally about to start rolling film. And he's like, "What's your weed name?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, you can't
What do
fucking
you?
be Mike. What the fuck is your weed name?" And I was like, uh, uh, and
Good choice.
immediately I'm like, "Well, I smoke spliffs. How about Mr. Spliff?" He's like, "Perfect, let's go." So like, bam, I Mr. Spliff just like that, right? And damn it, there was a point to this shit. Son of a bitch. Uh, oh yeah. Sweet. Um, so for years I've just been Mr. Spliff of Cannabis seeds, right? Like I didn't even call it seeds. It was just Mr. Spliff of Cannabis. My logo would be on the packs, and I recently changed about 2 years ago to now I'm Northwest Preservation presented by Mr. Spliff, and slowly we'll get to just
Nice.
Northwest Preservation. But that was like ideally what I wanted to be represented by was somebody that isn't the longest standing legend in cannabis. Sure, I know a lot of people, but there's a lot more people that are closely connected to groups that hold whatever. I was just a lucky person that met the right people and held on to my cuts and my name, and I always showed up, when I was supposed to. And
Right.
so now we're Northwest Preservation, and that's Pacific Northwest born and raised, and preservation is my craft. And so I try to source what I can and keep what I can and breed stuff that is, the weed industry has really changed a lot. And what was important to people is almost like what's fancy on Instagram. Like gardeners see these big stacked rooms with 100 lights and rock wool grows and all this weed so fire and blah blah blah. Well, is it? Is it? So I love the original raw information, because say something like
Mhm.
even cookies. There was so many breeds that came from cookies, and now there's biscottis and jealousies and permanent markers, and breeding with cuts like that. There's so much recessive information in there now that you don't know
Yes.
what you're going to get. And
Yeah.
it's like, this complex of just this funneling of flavors that are new, and a lot of the old information, the original sour diesels or chem 91s or particular hazes, that raw information is being lost. So trying to breed stuff that's similar to that, like how do you even get back to that point? So we've done our work to preserve a lot of these original flavors that, hold on one second, the wifey is yep, come in.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
But yeah, that's like a lot of my breeding is, I had this cut of chem that I got from NorCal from this group. I don't know exactly what it is. I've grown Chem D right next to it. They're not the same cut, but it's most like Chem D. And a buddy of mine saw Chem Dog Greg at a show recently and gave him some of the hash and the flower, and he was like, "Damn, dude, that's like, is this Chem D?" And my buddy was like, "I got it from Spliff." And it's the most potent weed in the fucking world. Every time I smoke it, my day is completely fucking over. Like, unless I've got activities to do that I'm stoked about, like gardening or something,
Right.
no, not until the end of the night. And she hashes like 8% when on the wash, and is a
Jeez.
huge yielder, like PM bulletproof. Bugs don't, I mean, maybe thrips might bite a plant like that, but when we got the russets, the chem was like one of 3 plants in the garden that was like, get off of me,
Bring
so
it.
and like you
Is
said, you
that
love chem 91, that raw gas, dude, that you only find in certain cuts of OG or kosher kush. And I think as I get older, that's what I really appreciate. That's the flavor that stops me in my tracks and makes me like
Mhm.
focus on the joint. So and that's what happened last night. I've been smoking other stuff, some cake crosses and some sours and this and that. And I rolled up the Seattle Sour Kush. I let the ember get going. Totally forgot what I rolled up. Went to the ashtray, picked it up, hit it, and I
nice?
was like, I immediately looked down at the joint. I was like, oh, it's me time. So, um, yeah, breeding now for almost 10 years. Not something I ever intended to do. Gage moved. I took over breeding just on a small project, and I was like, oh, I can do this. And so I just kept going, and here I am today. And after being canceled 5 million times for whatever fucking reason, this year I lost 42 Instagram pages. Last year I probably lost upwards of 100. And it's a nightmare. Not only do
Jesus.
you have to rebuild your following, but you lose all your DMs, all your conversations, all the address, like,
Website, my
yeah,
friend. Websites. Get them. See,
yep,
the hard thing, social media that's the place where everybody is. It's like living in the city. World does not
yep,
exist 5 miles outside of your bubble. Nobody wants to
right.
leave where everything is. So it's hard to get people to the websites. But if you can, that's a great place to try to build those lists. You've got a ton of killer genetics. I'm sure you could do some, newsletter type stuff and
Yep,
get people interested to sign up. So hopefully that will help you rebuild,
for
because
sure.
you do have a lot of good things up there. I'll keep touching on some of those, but one thing we kind of went over here is, you're talking preservation, and I thank you for that, because there's a lot of different cycles that I see. There's like, I just kind of say, like, there's the 70s stuff, and then the 80s, it was a lot of Northern Lights, it was a lot of haze, it was a lot of Afghani number ones, a lot of skunk number ones. We move into the 90s, you get a lot of the chems, the sours, the OGs, the Kushes. We get into the 2000s, and then that's when cookies starts to come, and that's, in my personal opinion, when everything went to shit. But I know it's really
Yeah,
popular, guys. So I'm on an island. I realize this, but yeah, the recessiveness, as you're mentioning, there's a lot more of that in there, and I do think a good way out of it, and something I like to do, is I like to try to pull again. You go with something old and maybe match it with something more modern, and you get more of that hybrid vigor
right.
versus something that is just totally close together. So I kind of like to balance that stuff, or at least that's how I try to do it. But I
Uh-huh.
wanted to ask you, you had mentioned the Dwamish, which,
Mhm.
if you're from Washington, you could probably pronounce that. If you're not, good luck. Also try Snoqualmie. But
Puyallup.
yeah, Puyallup, exactly.
I know that.
But I do remember Dwamish. I do remember that in the, like, the medical days, and even
Yep.
probably into a little bit of the rec. But what is that? Can you tell us more about that for all
Yeah,
my
for sure.
non-Washington folks? Say Dwamish
So
with me.
Dwamish diesel, like the Dwamish Riverhead is what you would see in the port of Seattle. That riverhead pours into the bay, and it's got a lot of history. A lot of the natives were settled in that area because the food was so abundant. There was salmon, there was freshwater fish, there was game. And with the proximity to freshwater, a lot of agriculture took place in that
Right.
Dwamish Riverhead. And so a lot of stuff that I bred, like the strain that led to the Dwamish was Evergreen, and we're the Evergreen state.
Okay. Yep.
So I originally made the Evergreen, which was Seattle Sour Kush, which is the Chem 4 headband. So I crossed Seattle Sour Kush to Mendo Breath F2 while I was working with Gage, and we were going to release that with 7 other strains. And then I had hunted 250 seeds from the Seattle Sour Kush to Mendo Breath, which we called Sour Grapefruit Kush. I went through
Okay.
150 seeds, didn't find what I wanted, started another 100, found 2 epic males, and I settled on the number 7. So that's called Sour Grapefruit Kush. Again, Chem 4 headband, Mendo Breath F2.
Damn.
So I find this epic male, and we had also been breeding some stuff since we knew JJ from Top Dog through my buddies. I'd gotten a bunch of his packs, and we had a Chem Dog 91 BX1. We found a male out of that. I pollinated True OG. And then from that, we pollinated sour diesel. That created this mom that was like a sour diesel kush that smelled like Vicks Vapor Rub, dude. It was straight
Wow.
menthol diesel kush. So I
Wow.
took that Seattle Sour Kush Mendo Breath and I pollinated the menthol diesel, which is again Chem 91 True OG sour diesel, to Seattle Sour Kush Mendo Breath. That creates Evergreen, which is like this menthol sour diesel cushy. Sometimes in that F1 you'd see a little bit of color and Mendo perps coming from the Mendo Breath, but very rarely. So we have this strain called Evergreen with all that combined. Now, while I was working with Gage, we were also given special seed stock that would have been called Serendipities. The other part of it would have been called Diamonds and Dust. So they did a big open pollination on a deck outside. Just let the males. There was 10 males, 10 females, roughly. Well, they took like 6 or 7 of the moms and combined all the seed stock and did like 50 seeds for $100, and that was their diamonds. resin and dust pollen series. Well, then they had like the OGKB Forum cookies and Skywalker, and they pulled those moms aside and individually shucked them. So I got a bag of like 50 seeds straight from OGKB, 10 possible males. Nobody knows what's in it. And at that time, there was Grateful Breath, Mendo Breath, and then from Archive Dosido. Nobody else had OGKB because it came from NorCal IC Mag, and he was only giving it to 2 different breeders at the time. So Gage Green and Archive were the only people that had it at the time. So I get this like opportunity where OGKB crosses are huge and nobody has the cut. And here I have 50 seeds that are unknown F1s of OGKB. And we found a lot of really cool stuff out of that. We found this one that was number 4, very cookie, very just blown out cookies, beautiful. And then I had also pollinated with the Mendo Breath Male Forum cookies, which then again, I hunted 250 seeds, found this epic male, pollinated that OGKB F1 number 4. That created what we called the OGKB4 project. I took the keeper from the OGKB4 project and pollinated it with the previous male, the Evergreen.
Okay.
That makes Dwamish diesel.
That
Dwamish passes on. Good.
I'm sorry, but that's a stellar lineup of ass-kicking strains.
Dude, for sure. And it brings like 2 cool worlds like Kush and Chem to cookies and OGKB. And so when we started that, we found a couple of keepers, both on the male side and the female side, and they were just hulked the fuck out, dude. Like I've seen a lot of genetics, but because of the 250 seed hunt on the sour grapefruit Kush, which was the Chem 4 headband Mendo Breath F2, dude, that male was just stout and everything you could want from a dude. And that has continued to pass on through my lines forever. And so when we made the Dwamish, you know, a lot of the moms had like this menthol vanilla to them with like cookies and Kush and some chem in the back. And it was a stellar plant, but it always passed on vanilla. And we hit my chem cut and made vanilla chem, which has been wildly popular. One of the fastest growing, most sturdy plants you'll ever see in your life. Washes at 8%. True menthol vanilla. The vanilla is prominent. So the Dwamish diesel became like a major breeding male. And I still had the Evergreen, which was really Kush sour diesel and headbands. And there was a little Mendo Breath in it, but that didn't really show off that often. So we used the Evergreen line to pollinate all of our OGs and all of our sours. And then we used the Dwamish diesel to also hit a lot of that stuff, making vanilla Kushes and vanilla this and vanilla that. I hit Subcool's Cut a Killer Queen, which is Cindy 99 to G13 pineapple mango. So we hit that with the Dwamish and make Crocodile Eye. For those that watch Sub, he'd go into his grow room with a green light and he'd say, "I'm the cannabis hunter." And he'd have his Aussie accent going, and he would say, "I'm gonna spot these buds with my crocodile eye." So when just before Sub passed, like a year before Subcool passed, we wanted to bring out Spliff Sub collabs for the weed nerds. And because we, you know, I left TJ in 2014 early on. Right when I left Sub, I changed my name on Instagram. I had probably 30,000 followers at the time. I was Mr. Spliff of TGA on all my YouTubes, on all my Instagrams, on everything. And then I come out one day and my name is changed to Mr. Spliff of Cannabis. And I announce that I'm leaving TGA. And Subcool gets on that post and he's like, "Spliff, I love you. I want the very best for you. I understand why you're leaving. It pains me." And, you know, all this loving stuff. Well, like 6 months later, he starts talking some shit. I don't know why. Nothing of it's even like he's calling me a con man of all things. And I'm like, what does that relate to? And there's a lot of people in his ear. So like I've told the story, I went back to the Emerald Cup in 2015, head straight to the TGA booth. I'm working for Gage at the time because I want to know what the fuck is up with my friend. Right. And I show up to the booth. Everybody's like, no, you don't want to be here. Sub's like not cool with you. And I'm like, the fucking hell he isn't. And I wait around for 20 minutes. He doesn't show up. So I'm like, I'll be back. I go to walk out of the 215 area. Bam, Sub and I run into each other face to face, dude, like bonk heads. And he looks at me and he's like, "Oh, fuck." And like we had this 2-second stare down and I immediately just like grabbed him and hugged him and like started rubbing his back. And I was like, "I don't care what anybody else has said to you. I don't care about what you've said. Just know that I'm a lifelong friend and I love you, and none of the bullshit's ever going to get in the way with that. And like tears rolling from both of us. And he looked at me, like steps back. He's like, I totally thought you were going to hit me. I'm like, dude, I might be a little bit of a Billy badass sometimes, but not that guy, right? And so we
Right.
like rekindled way harder than we ever were before because we were close, but now our fabric's been tested.
Yeah,
And so for
exactly.
the
The
next couple of
bond.
years, yeah, dude. And I mean, we were the kind of friends that would spend 3 hours on the phone. Like if the phone ringed and my wife knew it was Sub, she's like, I'll see you in a few hours. So towards the end of that, we wanted to make some stuff together just to give back to the weed nerds because I'd been on a lot of shows, done YouTubes and Instagrams, always Subcool shit. And so we were going to make 5 strains to release. And the first one that I had ready that we were about ready to market was Dwamish Diesel, Cross to the Killer Queen. I named it Crocodile Eye in honor of him doing the cannabis hunt and my crocodile eye. And about 2 months before we were about to make flyers and announcements, he passed away. So
Wow.
it's crazy to have this pineapple mango vanilla menthol cross called Crocodile Eye, and I still have some packs left that I do sell them these days. I gave away at least 300 packs before I ever considered, selling a pack because it was just hard for me to think about making money off of my buddy who had passed. And literally without Subcool, I wouldn't be sitting here today. He was the one that put me on. He was the one that wanted to show off my garden. I had to make my spliff name that day, and um,
I'm
so
I'm
we made a
sorry
lot of.
for the loss. Yeah.
It is what it is, right?
Yeah,
It's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. And
100%.
watching the videos on YouTube yesterday was because I haven't watched one in like 2 years. And not that it was like so hard, but you get busy with things. And I spent a couple hours
I get it.
yesterday just hunting through videos, and to hear his voice is the thing that trips me out the most. Because even when we were close friends, he would be like, "You still watch my weed nerds?" I was like, "Dude, all the time." He's like my whole garden, all our lines. Like he was like, "Why do you watch them?" I was like, "Because I feel like you're sitting next to me in the garden." And
Yep.
like we know each other so close that I hear your voice and I sometimes look for you. So and it's part of why we started making videos years back was I don't ever consider myself to be able to carry the torch, but to pay homage to something that was such an awesome thing. Sometimes there was 15-minute videos, sometimes they were an hour, and there was nothing better than listening to Subby say, "Get your bongs, your pipes, your zeppelins, your joints, your chainsaw bongs. It's time to get high with the weed nerd." Right? That was just that little gear up for the show. And I started breeding with a lot of different stuff, and that was one of those things. The Dwamish Diesel was super important, right? Locally named, just like the Evergreen. I had gotten the cut of Dog Walker OG from Green Bodie down in Portland, and the Columbia River goes from all the way through Washington and pours out into the ocean in Portland. And so we named that one Columbia River Kush. Right, we've got all this
Nice.
stuff that's
Yep.
named locally or West Coast. Like I got the Fire OG from a buddy that lived on the southern side of the Siskiyou, so we called that the Siskiyou Sour because we had crossed it with Evergreen. And so a lot of stuff was kind of like that. And now that I've made 150, 200 crosses, names are tougher and everybody's breeding. And
Yes.
somebody on IG that's just as enthusiastic about cannabis as us maybe doesn't have the experience, but they want to try their hand at breeding. And the breeding pool's so good these days, as long as you're mindful that anybody can create fire. And every single time they create something, there's a name attached. So now I got to Google and make
Thank
sure that I'm
you.
not,
Thank
like,
you for fucking Googling at
uh,
least. I've come
dude,
up to that with my last one. It's something that's been out for a year and a half. It's had plenty of like coverage and posts and all this. And then yeah, somebody who's, I mean, no offense, but like 35 followers picks the same name. And I'm like, can we work
right,
on this? And then comes at
right,
me with
right.
the attitude. I'm like, wait a minute.
A
Don't,
hundred
don't.
percent, dude. That happens, and like until we've got, the modern American legal system that's like covering names and copyrights and
Right.
things like that, registered trademarks. It's kind of anybody's game sometimes, but it doesn't take long to Google search. And funny enough, uh, what's his company's name? I can't remember. There's Skunk VA's got a Twin Peaks. Jake from 808
Yes.
Genetics has got a Twin Peaks, and I've got a
Yep.
Twin Peaks. And I'm like, well,
Yep.
I grew up near North Bend. where the Twin Peaks show is being filmed, and that's why I chose that name. I used to hike Mount Si all the time, and so Twin Peaks was a big part of my breeding. Yep.
That's me.
That's even
That's
better.
me.
Yeah, I think so like it's one of those things, right? Where you just there's common names that you and dude, I swear I Googled every single name, and we have naming parties on my lives where there's a couple of guys that are Googling while everybody's throwing ideas out. And like
Right.
for instance, we just did a generally I do not breed with anybody else's males. Like I'll find something that's awesome out of pack, pollinate it with my males, make an F1 and go from
Mhm.
there. But I'd handed off a pack of Karma Genetics original headbanger to a buddy of mine,
Okay.
and he's like 45 minutes down the road, phenomenal gardener. And he helps me. He runs like 95% of my stuff, but if I've got a special pack that I don't have space for, I can
Hell yeah.
trust him to run it thoroughly. So he hits me up the other day and he's like, dude, one of those headbangers that I thought was a female is a male. And he sends me a picture of it. He's like, I'm going to chop it down tomorrow if you don't come get it. And I was like, water it tonight. I'll come and get it tomorrow. From the pictures, it looked like a stunning male. And mind you, generally I like
Okay.
to hunt between 20 and 30 males at a time and look at them side by side and see where that perfect expression of nuance is, depending on what I'm looking for. So it was the only male out of the pack that he had kept because there were smaller seeds that we just tossed. So I get to his house and I see this headbanger male and I'm like, man, it's really, really, really nice. And it's like 5 days from dropping pollen. And Karma's got really good OGs and sours and stuff like that. They've always been a company that brought forth like legitimate gear. And I just didn't want to pass up the opportunity of using it because if it creates something really special, shame on me for not taking the opportunity.
Yeah.
So I just happened to have a situation where I had put a bunch of plants into flower thinking I had a particular male out there and I didn't have that male out there. So I was like, oh, I'll just flower these out. There was like 8 different strains. Fine. I'll get a quarter pound off of each and have plenty of smoke. Then I go pick up the headbanger male. And so here we are with 8 new crosses and we're like trying to figure out what to call them. And, you know, headbanger kind of relates to rock. So the Seattle Sour Kush, the Chem 4 headband, a headbanger is grunge ganja.
Nice. I
The
like it.
the forum cookie to headbanger is stage dive. The cherry pie to headbanger is mosh pit pie. The then we've got biscotti, which we called the rolling scones. My spacecraft, which is like sour chem 91 to headbangers called crash site. The double baked cake is called cake it easy. And then I've got one. So we hit the Karma Sour BX4 cut we have with their headbanger. So it's like a female that's not mine and a male that's not mine, but I love the mom and I didn't want to waste the opportunity with the male. So I call that superlative sour, which is a word that I probably wouldn't have known without watching the show The Office. Because when Michael writes a recommendation for Dwight, he says that he is a superlative friend, which is of the highest order. And then we have something called King Joshua OG, which is my Spliff Sour Kush cross to the headbanger. So you get into these names, right? And we're picking all these names. I'll tell people I'm going to name 3 of them, and if I see names that I like, we'll incorporate it. So I'm getting 40 names per strain, and you know we're narrowing down the ones we like. And we find one we like, and someone's like, "Nope, it's already taken." You know, like we got 5 guys googling at the same time, and it's tough. You got to
Yeah.
be unique and inventive, and you're trying to make it something close and personal. Do you get all excited and you're like, "Oh, that name's already taken." Shit. Now,
Yep.
you know, you're not stepping on toes all the time, but sometimes you're riding the tailcoat of somebody else by doing that, and so genetics in general, it's really tough. And you know, I've got like some of the stuff, like this is a King Louis OG BX number 1. I just call it King Louis OG BX1. I've got a Seattle Sour Kush BX1. I did name my Chem 91 BX1 Reverb. So sometimes I name the BX1s, but you know, when you've got 200 strains plus over 10 years, it starts to get tough, and you want to be connected to each name. You're like, no, I want to really love it. And I haven't released anything that I didn't love the name. So that's nice. And not that the name dictates a strain, but you know, you put all this beautiful breeding work together and you're all stoked on it. And then, you know, you got all these guys that have never named strains before and they're just trying to mash the words together. And you're like, no, no. So, you know, the local names worked real well because there was a couple of breeders. There's like On the east side of the state, there's Red Eye, there's Soulfire and Pacific Northwest Roots and Exotic over here, folks like yourself. And um, but a lot of the local names aren't taken. So it's like why we started kind of doing that was it just made sense for us to like have some identifier that we were Pacific Northwest, and
Mhm.
now I'm Northwest Preservation. So it kind of ties all together. And
It, it,
we are doing the website. It's under construction because I'm not a tech guy. I'm a caveman. I'm good at building stuff,
yeah.
but like, and I'm intuitive enough. And thankfully, the people that design, like, I use Restream instead of StreamYard. Super
Okay.
fucking intuitive. Like, very easy. I can add
Really?
QR codes to the screen that people can click on and take them to my website directly from the chat.
Oh, okay.
Um, but we're working on, I've got, clones listed on there, and I'm about to get all the seed stock listed on there with lineage. It's going to be a whole thing, and I'm late to the party on that. A lot of these guys have better business sense, and they're like, no, this is not the 19 or the 1800s. You actually have to be like visibly on social media and then have a website where you don't get shut down. So,
Yeah. That's the thing about controlling the website is you're not really going to get shut down. The
right,
payment processors, that's another story, but it's, there's certain things you could do on your website. Like as far as your landing page, don't have cannabis or don't have plants on your front landing page. A lot of times that's the
right,
first thing they check, but sometimes they go even deeper. I know different breeders who have a website dedicated to their like strain descriptions and their pictures, nothing for sale over there. And then they have a
right.
website where there's no pictures, but so there
That's
are,
exactly what we want to do. Have like
yeah.
a picture with a SKU on it, and you take that
Mhm.
SKU number and go to the other website, and it might just be an art thing. And I think at one point we're going to get caught up legally to where we don't have to tell that lie, which sucks to be in the position in the first place. So,
Yeah. It's all
um,
it's all fuckery, but it's
yep,
obvious. It's in plain sight. Everybody, it's not like we're freaking geniuses over here, but it's like, hey, you just have to do this and then it'll be all of a sudden magically okay. So that's the game that
yeah,
we play for now. But I will put
yeah,
your website, if we have a link, I will put that down in the show notes for everybody to
yep,
click on. I also want to let everybody know your Instagram and your YouTube page are going to be linked
yep,
down in the show description. So very easy, guys.
awesome.
You can just scroll down, click right on those. And a lot of these things that you were mentioning. Well, first of all, the naming, I like the naming because it's almost like an Easter egg. If somebody
Yep,
wants to look further or knows to look further, there is something to find. So that's
yep.
kind of fun. That's the interactive nature. Again, making it, I don't know, more of an experience. It's, I still like to buy the 12-inch vinyl or the CD because of the case notes or that physical thing.
Right,
So
right, dude. It's all about once you find something that's special to you, having a piece of that history, like there's a
yeah.
couple of, I don't have a record player, but I have a few records, and there's a few even that got released in the last year. Like I'm pretty picky when it comes to music, but there was a hip hop guy that released a record like last year, and I was like, I want to buy the vinyl, and my wife's like, why? And I was like, it's the same thing as having a piece of art on my wall.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so, and with cannabis, like there's a lot of just like when I look at other people's menus these days, they're breeding 20 cuts that they're not original clone onlys. They're somebody else's mix matched work. And I've seen enough of cheetah piss and apples and bananas combined by 20 different breeding crews. And they're like, this is God's gift to cannabis. And I'm like, where is the sour? Where is the OG? Where is the chem dog? Like, and even with cookies, everybody got cookies at one point, either smoke or this or that, and then they got a cut that they suppose was cookies, and they're like, I'm gonna
Mhm.
create the next cookies. And I'm like, man, there's a lot of recessive information in cookies, and you're gonna be lucky
Yeah.
to actually get cookie shaped flour that really resembles the mother. You're going to have to hunt a bunch of seeds, and you're not going to quite get there. And it took me years to build males that integrated with like Thin Mint and Forum Cookie and kept that flavor, kept the bud shape and the things that you would hope to see out of a particular breed like that. Um, so it's all back to why you're doing it. The reason I breed and the reason I smoke and cultivate is because I love cannabis. Like when I was young, I was a soccer player, like being groomed to play professional, and smoking was a no-no. And so the
Yeah, no,
first
no.
time we'd actually smoked herb before we'd ever smoked cigarettes, and it was the whole like thing of seeing smoke come out of your mouth type thing. You're like inhaling this thing and you blow smoke out and you're like, wow, and then there's like this effect to it, and it really helped me through my youth to not become angrier than I was. You know, I grew up with a not a crazy abusive father, but that dude beat the shit out of me when I needed it. But I grew up with this like frustration of the world, you know, watching my dad go from being very wealthy to broke in a month, you know, and growing up in a household that then became separated, my parents divorced and moved schools all the time, dealt with new kids treating me like shit all the time, and especially because I was a really good athlete. They were like, fuck you, come to our school and
Right.
be a boss. And so I had moved to a new middle school in 8th grade, went to high school at a school where, you know, I knew people, I was friends with everybody, but I didn't really have any like core friends that I'd grown up with my whole life in that area. And
Right.
so just with all the things I'd taken on in life, when I finally met cannabis, and I'll tell that story real quick. I was under the impression that I wanted to smoke marijuana. I was like, I see all these kids doing it, and you know, what is it all about? So there's this chick that was in my 5th period class, like gorgeous chick, one of the hottest chicks at the school, and we were good friends. I was never a dude that like had a chance with her at the time, but like we really enjoyed each other's company and would bullshit. And one day I'm like looking at her in class and she's like, "What the fuck do you want?" I'm like, "Can you get me some weed?" And she just starts laughing because I'm not that kind of kid, right? I'm like freshman in high school, and we had smoked once in middle school and didn't know what it was. Probably wasn't very good weed. I just remember having a headache.
Right.
So I'm asking this chick, Sarah, I'm like, "Can you get me some weed?" And she's like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I want to smoke and I don't know anything about it, but I'm very interested." And she's like, "All right, dude, what do you want?" I was like, "I got $20." She's like, "Okay, I'm going to take a quarter of the bag when I get it, and you're going to get like, you know, 15 bag, and that's just the way it is." And I was like, "Dude, cool with me. You can get me weed." She's like, "Yeah." So, um, I can't remember if it was the same day or the next day, but it must have been the next day. She comes to class, and like the teacher's at the front of the class with her back turned to the class, writing stuff on the board, and she just plops this bag of weed on my desk. And I immediately take it
Damn.
and put it in my pocket. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's drugs," you know? So I
Yeah.
go home that night, and like 2 weeks before that, one of the other naughty girls at the school is in the middle of class making a pop can pipe. Now the teacher is so old, they have no idea what she's doing, but she's bending the sides up and poking the holes and making a carve.
Yep.
And I'm like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "I don't have a pipe, so I got to make a pop can pipe." I'm like, "For what?" She's like, "Oh, I smoke weed." And I was like, "Oh, you can smoke it off a pop can?" She's like, "Yeah, a lot of people do in high school because we always got cans, but we don't have pipes." And like, dude, if you knew somebody with a proto pipe back in the day,
Dude.
you were top dog, dude. The gold proto
Yep.
pipe, completely
Oh yeah.
cleanable, or the pipes with the resonator chamber, you're like,
Re-
"I'm a god amongst men." So
Resin was
as far as
black gold back then, man. Oh
oh my
god.
goodness, bro, and how stoned you would get from scraping them pipes, like
Fuck.
fuck. Hearing
Yeah.
that resin sizzle, like scraping the bong stem back in the day. Oh, ho,
Yes, yes.
ho.
How much plastic from
So
the graphics did we get in there? But anyway, so Sarah, yeah, so Sarah, you
yeah,
were
so I
smoking.
I get this herb, and like literally 2 weeks before that in class, I saw this chick making a pop can pipe, and she had a little thumbtack, and she showed me all the details of it. You got to bend the sides up so the weed doesn't fall out. And you got to make a carve, and you got to push that in a little bit, and like it's like wow, technology. So I get this dub sack from this chick, and $15 worth of weed. And
Yeah.
I go and I'm dating this chick at the time, and I'm like, "I want to get stoned." And she's like, "What?" And mind you, she drank a little bit from time to time. And I'm like, "Well, you drink, so why do you have a problem with me smoking?" She's like, "I don't really, but like you, like you're like a star athlete and all that shit." And I was like, "Dude, I'm in pain all the time." I made whatever excuse I could. So we
Right.
go to a school. It's like an elementary school, like on the big toys out back of the school. It's like 3:30. Teachers are still around,
Oh
and like we'd
no.
go play soccer there and hang out on the toys. But there's this like 10 poles with this framed roof over this big toy, and I'm in the very top of it. And I smoke like a gram my first time to myself off the pop can, multiple bowls.
Wow.
And all of a sudden my girlfriend's like, hey, there's like teachers over there, we should leave. So we like walk out of the back of the school through the chain link fence. We get like 20 steps outside of the school, and it hits me like a freight train. And it doesn't make me feel uncomfortable. I'm just in dreamland, right? Like
Oh,
straight
wow.
up fucking dreamland. And this chick definitely could get good weed. She was connected to the bad boys that knew the difference. And this is my first time smoking, like, for real.
Right.
She's trying to talk to me the whole way home, and like she has to say my name multiple times, and I'm like, huh? She's like, dude, what's up with you? I was like, I feel like I'm in a dream walking. Just like so
Wow.
surreal. I get back to my house, and she's like, all right, I'm gonna go back home. I got you here safely. Your brother's here. I walk inside. I go to the fridge. I get a whole half gallon of milk, put it on the table. I grab a brand new box of what was it? It was Golden Grams, unopened. Get the cereal bowl and a spoon, and I crush the entire box of Golden Grams. And we're at this square table, and my little brother's sitting next to me. He's 2 years younger than me, and he's just watching me eat this cereal. And like I get to the end of it, there's a little bit of cereal left, and I'm like, like I have the first relief after getting stoned. And he looks at me and he's like, dude, what the fuck is up with you? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, bro, you just ate a whole box of cereal and you drank most of that half gallon of milk. And like we're not a financially stable family at that point. So I just ate like a couple days worth of breakfast in one sitting.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, what the fuck is up with you? And I'm like, dude, I smoked weed today. And my brother's so disappointed, but so intrigued at the same time. And that's literally like how my first whole thing came to be of smoking cannabis. And, um, my parents had found out a little while after, and my mom was not pleased. My dad came over and kicked the shit out of me, and he didn't live with us at the time, and came and gorilla flexed on me. And he was trying to be a good parent. Don't get into drugs, blah, blah, blah. And after I got my ass whooped that night, my mom's like, I will say that you're like the most calm, peaceful you I've ever seen when you're smoking.
Hmm.
And that's interesting. And, I'd faced a bunch of knee surgeries, been pumped full of Vicodin, Percocet, Lortabs, Vioxx, Celebrex, Ultram, all this fucking pharmaceutical garbage, half of it been recalled. And cannabis
Jeez.
was the only thing that ever gave me a little home away from home that I felt like was incentive for dealing with the world, because
Right.
it's tough out there. There's so much judgment, and people are loving at their core, but because people aren't willing to engage their vulnerability and test that and see where they stand within themselves, they're often judgmental before they're
Yeah.
introspective or want to learn about something. So cannabis has always been that like refuge. And I've heard some people call it a crutch, and it's not that at all. Just like they
No.
would call somebody's faith a crutch. You can't live without that faith. No, it's just my higher order. So
Right.
cannabis
Right.
and cannabis is light. It's not like even consuming alcohol or some really hard drugs that they really control your life. Now, we might be potheads that smoke every day, but I can still function on cannabis. Now, you might be a little slower at times, especially if you smoke chem or something like that. But cannabis has always been something that was really special to me, And after seeing it heal my mom when she was dealing with the cancer, um, and then I when I was working with right after I'd left Subcool, I found an article discussing cannabis in a compound called salvestrol,
Hmm.
which was really
Not heard of
enlightening.
that one.
And then I found out that salvestrol is commonly produced in cannabis, but a lot of the nutrient companies, knowing it or not, are required to use certain things that actually suppress
Okay.
salvestrol production.
Huh.
And that became a major eye opener for me, right? It was because it's funny, right? Weed's illegal, yet there's all these grow shops selling grow food out in public. There's
Sure.
General Hydroponics and Advanced and the Yellow Bottle and whatever else. There's 50
Yeah.
brands on the counter. There's bales of dirts and lighting, and they're selling it for tomato farmers or people with greenhouses. And I'm like, so obviously the powers that shouldn't be are aware of what's going on, and then they bring medical out, bring all the people out into the public, learn all their SOPs, convert it to rec, where then you have to show them every milliliter of everything you're using, which then they sell to people that are willing to buy those better SOPs, even though you're not supposed to be able to transfer that stuff. And so I've got good perspective. I've been in the industry like on the TGA was my beginning as far as coming out into the industry, and that's 15 years, and plus the 15 years of smoking and selling bags, and you know,
Well,
I've
we
seen a
kind of
lot, and yeah,
yeah,
so
we started this conversation, kind of both in agreement. Like we're really kind of in the middle. We all stand on the
yep,
shoulders of giants.
yep,
But when it comes to today, to the industry, a lot of people of our era are the ones who got fucked the hardest because we were the ones who successfully figured out how to take it from, growing outdoors or a few freaking street lights into a controlled, like you said, SOP multi-light, not facility, but like houses. We figured that stuff out. And that's something
right,
that they were very short on. And a lot
without a
of
doubt.
people, but a lot of people believing in the plant and wanting to do good and not being necessarily businessmen at all,
Mhm.
we're easily misled by a lot of the the famous one. And I get very weird about this proprietary information, but the dinner, hey, I'd love to take you out to dinner sometime, and we're going to ask you all the questions of everything we need to know, and then we're done with you.
Mhm.
So enjoy your
Dude,
$60 plate. It's
I,
fucked up because
I
we don't see these things, but now we know. And
yeah.
I
Well, that's an
sensed a little
interesting point.
frustration there. Yeah, when you were
Well, that's
talking
where
about
the
that.
term Chads came from, right? Is
I
these guys in the
know, damn it.
industry that
Yeah,
are
true.
money dudes, and they're the word isn't cunning. There's another word that escapes me right now, but I've had tons of those sit downs and dinners, and I quickly recognized what was going on, and I was a complete fucking asshole every time. And honestly, had I not drawn the line in the sand like that, they probably would
Yeah.
have thought I was a pushover. And
Yep.
um, and back in the day, someone would rat on you or this or that. These days, the fucking over is over like $3 million, right? Like people get involved into a business and somebody forgets to sign something and they tuck it away, and look at how many breeding companies have fallen apart just because of massive disagreements and money. And so it's like as the industry gets bigger and more value to it, the kind of rat bullshit that you see is on a whole nother level. But it didn't come with like the fear of when we were growing up, right? Like
Yep.
I've been
And
arrested a few
that's
times for it, and I got a great story for that. Oh man. But we'll get back to that. But the industry these days, I just don't think people understand the growing pains of what, say the Jack Herrers or Eddie Leps or Subcools or Mark Emerys or some of these people that were really big and fought cops and went to jail. And like Subcool. He told me a story. He's sitting in Georgia, and he's like defoliating some plants and transplanting plants in his living room. And he said all of a sudden he starts seeing shadowy figures go in front of his blinds, and there's like 10 of them. And he's like, oh, fuck. And he like peers out, and they're all uniformed up and ready, and they kick the fucking door in and
whew.
him up. He goes to jail, and he was like, it was the most terrifying experience of my life to be sitting there transplanting in Georgia plants, and then all of a sudden the 5-0, like, SWAT team, special weapons and tactical. Like,
Jesus.
that's unnerving, and
Yeah, just a little.
funny enough too, with the modern industry, a couple of my buddies, they originally were called the Calyx Kings. Now they're Cultivar, House of Cultivar.
Okay.
They
Yep.
were part of the very first rec grow in Washington that was down in it was down south of Olympia by an hour and a half, Raymond.
Cool.
So they had helped them set up their first cultivation, and they ran through their first crop. They sent it all to dispensaries. Well, one of the printouts, they're selling stuff to a dispensary is short a quarter ounce.
Hmm.
And dude, they set the cops into motion. And my buddy was working at the garden at the time, and he was one of the higher ups, helps kind of design stuff. And he's like, dude, 40 cops showed up. And they went through the building, and they were accusing us of stealing and this and that. And they were going to pull the license over 7 grams of weed.
That's
Come to
crazy.
find
And
out, in the packaging room, a fully packaged with a sticker and everything had fallen behind the counter. They found it and they all left. But he's like, bro, we were like in the garden doing things legal, and all of a sudden the fucking stormtroopers show up. And so it's same, but it's different, right? I mean, we were definitely a lot more quiet back in the day because God forbid you got somebody exposed. I mean, God, you might lose a gardener that was providing 50 to 60 people the ultimate flame, and people these days might not know what we had to go through. And I think that's a huge testament to what Gabby's been speaking about. We got to start telling the stories now before, you just can't remember it clearly. And it's a long day since my first dub sack, I'll tell you that, like,
yeah.
Oh man, the times of being in the car stone, getting pulled over, and just your heart beating through your chest. These days, you get pulled over in Washington, cop smells fresh weed, he's not even going to say anything. If he smells an out joint, he'll be like, "Did you smoke today?" Like, it's not a big deal,
Yeah.
Mind you, this is a pro tip. Some people might not agree with it, but there is the police sticker that looks like an American flag with black lines, but there's one blue line on it. It's the thin blue line sticker.
Yep.
And I'll be damned if it's not on every single fucking one of my cars.
Yeah.
Now, I've had somebody threaten me with a knife in a parking lot over it. I've had somebody spit on me because of it.
Jeez.
But I've also had cops pull up behind me about 30 times since I had those stickers, and I've never been pulled over. I've been doing 80 and a 60 and then slowed down once I saw them. They pulled up, ran my plates, make sure I didn't have no warrants, and then they just went around. So
and that's a good tip for anybody who has to deal with cops. Like, it is funny because I was always the one that the friends would look to because I was used to it. I was good with them. Things went cool. It's all about how you treat them. And that first impression. Dude. That first impression 100%. Is the sticker on the back of the car. So they already may be a little disarmed. And it's amazing, younger, angrier, full of fucking venom. I was much different. And I learned as you get older, it's like, dude, just don't fuck with them, just be decent. You don't have to be a pushover. Yeah, you don't have to be a pushover. You can stand your ground. You can be firm, and you absolutely should. But treat them with a little bit of dignity, and it'll be amazing how much you get back. Not everybody, but start there. Start there at least, right? Start there and then get pissed off if you have to.
And I try to remind people that it wasn't a bunch of dudes that got together one day and were like, we're going to be cops and take advantage of people. The state requires policing. It is a service offered by the federal government and local governments to keep towns, cities, municipalities safe. And the carryover for that when you're involved in something like cannabis is there's a gray area. And dude, I got pulled over one night in Snoqualmie. My buddy asked me to come up and help
people listening. Yep.
Dude, small town up in the mountains. And so my buddy calls me, he's like, hey, can you come help me transplant? I'm like, sure. I smoke like a 2.5 gram joint, just fly into his house, leaving Issaquah, driving 75, only 5 miles an hour over, but I'm briefing this fat ass 2.5 gram joint to myself. Get to his house, do like an hour and a half worth of work, get in the car to leave. I pull out of his little housing development, immediately get lit up by berries and cherries. And I'm like, fuck. Hey. And the guy comes to my window, and like I roll down my window and I can see him just turn his head because he can smell the fucking joint I smoked like an hour and a half ago. And he's like, can you turn your headlights on for me real quick? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And he's like, okay, your driver's side headlights out. I just wanted to double check. That's why I pulled you over. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, so do we want to talk about the smell in the car? And I'm like, sure. And he's like, so your car fucking reeks. And I was like, dude, my buddy and I smoked a joint like a few hours ago because his wife's just insane. And we went out to the car and I was trying to calm him down. And he's like, well, you don't seem stoned. I was like, I took a couple hits off the joint hours ago. I actually smoke pretty regularly. I've got a medical card. And or I hadn't brought up the medical card yet, but I was like, we smoke regularly and I know better than to get totally wasted and drive home. Yes. And he's like, okay. And we're talking back and forth. And at one point I'm like, well, I do have a medical card. And he's like, oh, great. Yeah, that just means that you can drive around and smoke weed, huh? And I was like, yeah, and he's like, look, dude, I don't think you're like intoxicated. He's like, your car fucking reeks. And what you're going to do is you're going to put your brights on and you're going to drive home as fast as you fucking can. He's like, I promise you, if you get pulled over by any other cop tonight, you are fucking going down. And he's like, you got a bunch of stadies on the way home and they won't like that your brights are on, but if they see you with your headlight out on the freeway, they're pulling you over.
Right.
And I was like,
Wow.
okay, cool. And he's like, so what did you learn tonight? I was like, that my medical card doesn't mean shit and that I shouldn't be a dumbass. He's like, exactly. I don't want to see you again. And I was like, don't come back. He's like, no, I don't want to have to pull you over again. Don't be an idiot. Like the nicest guy ever, just sends me on my way. And I was totally kind to him in the beginning, but it's not often that you get that cop. I've had cops.
No.
I got arrested when I was 24. We'd smoked out at my brother or at my buddy's house, me, my brother, my buddy, and his buddy. We were going to go to IHOP and eat pancakes and waffles and bacon and just pig the fuck out in breakfast food. It's like 8
Stone.
at night. We're going down to Issaquah, small city,
Yep.
cops everywhere.
Yep.
So we're
Yeah.
smoking for like 45 minutes at the house. We get 5 minutes down the road and my brother's friend lights up a fucking bowl in the back seat. And we're like, dude, we've been smoking for 45 minutes so we're baked. Why would you light up a bowl in the car? We're going to Issaquah. And he's like, it's not that big a deal. He takes like another hit and we start screaming at him. He's like, fine. We get down into Issaquah and we go through a yellow light and we're like, fuck, there was a cop right there. Of course he's going to be like, you ran a red. Pulls us over. We're in this big parking lot at a park. And he walks up to the window. My brother's driving. He's like, I got a pretty good sniffer.
Oh,
And my
geez.
brother, who's just got an attitude, looks at him. He's like, no, you don't. The guy like doesn't know what to say to that. He's like, everybody get the fuck out of the car. And like, it stinks like weed. We already know we're fucked.
Oh,
The kid in the
man.
back seat stuffed the pipe and his weed into like the cushion so you can't see it. I've got a
Yeah.
half gram on me. And so the two guys with us are like, oh, it's not our car. We didn't do anything. So they let them go. They're minors, but they get to walk off. They're going to call their parents and walk home because they're both
Bitches.
locals. They pull
Right.
me and my brother out and they're like, well, you guys got the same last name, so you're brothers, and this is his car, and you got weed on you, and we found the pipe in the back seat, so that's on the driver.
Yeah.
And we're like, they put us in cuffs, and then two cars pull into the parking lot, and we're like, what the fuck is this about? Oh, it's a local news crew. So they take pictures of us, plastered all over the front page of the local paper. The next morning, my
No.
mom's so fucking pissed. She's like, I've gotten calls from 20 parents to say they never want you around their
Oh,
kids anymore. And
no.
this one lady in particular who's just being nasty to my mom was like, dude, we buy weed from that fucking guy. What are you talking about? So it was one of those things where it was just a mess. And,
That's,
I've
yeah.
dealt with just nonsense and, but same time we'd be at Hemp Fest and we always had a booth right next to main stage on that little grass hill. And we would smoke weed nonstop. And we'd smoke weed when the cops were coming by. We didn't try and hide it. We weren't weird. And I had talked to one of the cops. I was like, so what's the deal with smoking weed at Hempfest? He's like, honestly, we don't give a shit. It's the one
No.
time where it's just as long as you're not passing it to kids. And he's like, honestly, the people we're trying to bust are the people with the fake cookies. And I was like, really? He's like, dude, that's the most bullshit thing to sell somebody a pot cookie that's just died with food dye. And
That's
one of my
awesome.
buddies ratted out a guy. He was like, came up to the cops on the bridge and he's like, that dude right there sold me 3 cookies and they're fake. And so they went down and cuffed him up. And the guy's like, they're not weed cookies. They're
Holy
like, they
shit.
sure smell like weed and they're green, and got him out of the park, dude. Didn't arrest him, but kicked him out of
Wow.
Hempfest. And, like, um,
Seattle PD that worked the Hemp Fest, they were special. Not only
mhm.
that, like that story, hearing that's freaking awesome. They knew what was up, but they also,
Yeah.
towards the end of the years, would hand out the bags of chips with the rules on the
Dude, the
back.
Doritos.
Basically, be like, just don't be a dick and you'll be fine. And they would
Yeah,
just
dude,
hand them
I
to
remember
people.
that. That was they had the nacho and Cool Ranch Doritos, the
Yep,
little
yep,
fun-sized bags with the cops. Oh, dude, those were
yep.
I know a guy that still has a bag unopened with the sticker still on it. And here's a fun
Epic.
note, and you might know this because you've been to Europe. They sell Doritos all over Europe, and the Cool Ranch is not
Yep.
called Cool Ranch in Europe. It's called
Nope.
Cool American. So I
Oh,
brought bags of that
wow.
home because ranch dressing is referred to as American dressing in Europe. So
Holy
Cool
shit.
Ranch is called Cool American. And when I saw that over there, I was like, what the fuck is this? And they're like, it's got American dressing. And I was like, you mean ranch? And they're like, I think that's what you guys call it. So, I was always eating the Cool American chips over there. Just, I'd have a bag. I wouldn't always eat them, but I brought a few bags home and people were like, Cool American? It's like, yep, I'm a Cool American. They made them just for me. So,
Dude, I'm getting a bag next
uh,
time. I'm looking for them because we have
we
seen some
saw 'em.
weird grocery store items and taken some pictures,
Yep,
but I've never,
yep.
never noticed that. That's fucking awesome. But yeah,
Dude, it
the
was
cops
right
down there
after.
were the right people to work.
Yeah, for sure, dude. And I've had experience with law enforcement all over the well, I shouldn't say all over the world, but for instance,
Yeah,
when I would go to
right.
Amsterdam, I always woke up at 6 a.m. when I was staying in Amsterdam, and I would go into the city and watch the city wake up because it's dead
Yep.
at 7:30, and then at 8 o'clock there's bikes, peoples, and trams everywhere. And there was the only people that were in Dom Square that, walking around were either homeless people or cops. So I started talking to the cops every day because they were great conversation. They loved to practice their English and they would tell me all sorts of
Hmm.
little secret spots to go in the city. I didn't know where Vondel Park was until I talked to one of the cops. He's like,
Okay.
dude, most beautiful park, little waterways. As long as you're standing away from people, you can smoke and it's okay. And
Yeah. We love the
so I had
museum
a good,
blind.
what's that?
I said, oh, sorry. I said we love the museum blind, which is on the way to Vondel
Yep,
Park. Museum blind, the Wreck
yep,
Museum, Van Gogh, and then the Concert Gibo,
yep.
which we go to because I'm an audio guy. So every time we go there. But yeah, Vondel Park's right down the street.
Yep,
Huge.
just outside of Leidseplein in that museum area. And dude,
Yep.
I loved Amsterdam. We had such a good time. And after being back 3 times, I went 2006, 2008, 2010. So by my last trip, I knew the city inside and out, and we had a great time when we were there. And another really good cop story, dude. I'm in Germany for the 2006 World Cup, and there's people. Okay, so the big hustle there was recycling bottles. And we stayed at the hostel, and our buddies worked there. And the bottles would fill up over a month on these racks. And the guys that were the janitors would collect those and make their 10 euros, here and there, because you get 25 cents per bottle.
Okay.
So there's thousands and thousands of people around and bottles everywhere. And so we're like snaking the bottles from the fucking we're getting trash cans full of these plastic bottles and getting 30 and 40 euros at a time, just stacking money while we're in Germany. And one time even the janitor saw us with these bag full of bottles and he chased us and we ran and we still stayed at the hostel the whole time, dude. It was nuts. But
Oh,
so there's all these
jeez.
side hustles, right? And during the World Cup, dude, the streets are shut down. There's thousands of people in the street, hundreds of thousands. And we decided one day we bought a cooler from one of the, sports type stores. And we got this big cooler, bought a bunch of ice, and we've got beers on ice. And we're out front of the hostel and we're sharing them with our friends, but we're also selling them to people in the crowd. And this dude walks up to me one day, big fat black mustache, slick back hair. He looks like an Hell's Angels guy without the vest on,
Okay.
like straight up thug. And he doesn't even speak to me in German. He's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I walked up to him. I was like,
Okay.
because he's coming to me. I was like, "You need a beer? You need a bottle of water? We got beers for $3 and waters for two." And he immediately is like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about, dude?" And he immediately
Yeah.
shows me his German secret police badge. And my buddy, who's like behind me, he's like, "Mike, listen to him." And I'm like, "So what's up?" He's like, "Do you have a permit?" And I was like, "No." And I was like, "I see all these people rolling these carts and selling stuff." He's like, "Every single one of those people has a permit, and we're like very serious about that." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, I'll shut it down right now." He's like, "I don't want to see you doing it again. This is my area, and I'm patrolling it, and I don't want to see you fucking around." And
Wow.
so we like pack everything up, and I'm like, we'll just keep it on the hostel grounds, and we'll just drink it ourselves and share with our friends. He's like, "Totally cool." And so he walks up the street, and I'm just like, "Oh, thank God." Well, then there's this group of like 5 or 6 of their riot police. And these guys, like, I've taken Wing Chun Kung Fu throughout my life. I'm pretty solid fighter. These dudes had that 10-mile stare. There's like 4 of them together and they're laughing and they're like, "Come over here." And I'm like, "Okay." Like I assume it's a friendly conversation. I go over and they're like, "Do you know who that guy is?" And I'm like, "No, I'm a tourist." They're like, that guy's like super hardcore special forces war hero, and he's generally not that nice to people. Whatever you said to him, we couldn't believe that he didn't just fuck you up right there. And and
Wow.
that's speaking to me in their German accents, trying to say this guy is very serious, and like, so it's all about the energy you give to people, and the same exists in our industry, right? Between breeders and people that have long-standing history with cuts or whatever else, you approach these people, and if you give them that little bit of snide bullshit, they're never going to talk to you again, and they're going to, go on their live and talk about you, So it's like you don't have to tiptoe, but bring an authentic, real self forward, and it's not that hard to make it. You just have to be real and do the work. And sometimes it might take you time to get into an inside circle, like, but a lot of us that have been doing this a long time are actually a lot nicer people than we seem. We just got to deal with a lot of bullshit all the time. And it's just part of the business,
It's-
love taking care of people. Like when people scoop seeds, especially the first time, I just fucking load them up and they're always like, thank you. And we teach a lot on our lives and do videos that give insight as to experience. Because if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I doubt my wife's going to like send out the clones to everybody just so the genetics stay there. And she might sell some seed packs to pay for my casket, but all the cuts I have are gone. All my experience is gone. So,
right.
Gabby again pushed me. He's like, get telling your story again. Cause I used to have tons of videos. I mean, if you Google Mr. Spliff on YouTube or look for it on YouTube or Google, you'll see a bunch of like old grow videos when I had a small, 6x6 veg area and then a closet where my teens were and then a 3 lighter that I was like,
Hey,
so,
be proud of it. Be proud of it, though.
oh, dude, super proud of it. And I was a framer, so my rooms are really well built, and we had the mylar on the walls that was just a
Hmm.
little bit loose. So when the oscillating fan hit it, it moved and sent light beams all over the garden, and we were like, "Man, we are scientific," So, uh, dude, I was of the age to watch BHO come around, and
Yeah,
BHO, like
yeah.
when it first came out, was green, yucky, scary, unpurged. Like you'd put the hash on, dude. When you and I first saw dabs come out, there was a tie nail with a globe that went over it.
Dude.
And then they got the globeless nail with the holes in the top and everything changed, but you had to finish that dab because there was no way to put like, a carb cap on top of the gavel that you had a second to blow out your hit and take the next part. You had to finish that dab on the nail. And dude, some of the BHO, like how many houses did you know that blew up in, 2010 to 2013 where people were making BHO at home and then whipping it on a griddle and then someone lights a cigarette and the house is gone.
The scary dude, that's the scariest shit. I'm glad we've really moved past those days because
Oh,
not anybody personally, but yes, we know of them. I've seen the video footage of, different facilities where it happens, that instant spark, the room and the two people trying to get out. I've interviewed a person who was in one of those rooms. And I mean, burns all over his entire body. He's had many surgeries since,
yep.
but it's still one of those things where it's like, fuck you guys, really? So it is
Yeah.
cool to see like the hash and the rosin and the press and all that stuff. So I'm glad we have kind of moved away from that. The first time
Yep.
I saw like that, I didn't even know it for probably another 5 or 6 years what I had just saw, but it was the late 90s. It was this dude who had kind of come back and forth from India. My girlfriend at the time was going over there to this ashram. It was a whole long story into that. But anyways, we were sitting in his apartment in the U district and she sold weed. So we're just like breaking up some weed and he gets this like pen like this, but like the clear ones. And he starts taking everything apart and stuffing weed into the pen. I'm like, what's he doing? And then the butane that you get at the store, like for your lighter, for your Zippo,
Yep.
he just starts running it through and it drips onto a plate. And he's like, we'll wait about an hour. And like an hour
Yeah,
later, just these little globs, he'd scoot them, put on. I was fucking high
dude,
as
so
hell.
high.
Didn't
Throat
know,
all
didn't
fucked
know
up.
what it was. Yeah, didn't know what that was for like 6 years later. I was just like, wow, that was cool. But I never had a
Yeah,
whole bunch of weed to like repeat it myself. So it just went the
right.
wayside. But yeah, that was my introduction.
Back when you'd put a dab on the nail and the dab would jump off because there was still so much
Oh,
unpurged
Jesus.
butane and like green poop soup butane. And, right when that
I
stuff came
haven't
out,
heard that
uh,
forever.
the first Subcool School of Dank in 2010, 2011, like right around those holidays. There was a bunch of people. I had my weed. It was the first time I met Sub. There was this dude that showed up to the party that he and his partner were. I don't know what they did, but they were chemist guys and this and that. He had like this softball shard of completely amber translucent BHO that would hold up to anything today. And he asked Subcool, he's like, "Hey, I got this hash. Do you mind if people want to buy some? Is it cool if I sell some at this event?" Sub's like, "Yeah, dude, for sure." See, there's a line of 50 to 100 people, and this guy was charging 120 a gram. And what he would do is he had a chisel and he would just shave off of this rockish type material. And so you get like this crystally shatter powder.
Yeah.
And dude, I'll never forget the first time I smoked, I put it in a joint. We'd smoked a little bit at the event, but I took some home. I rolled a joint. I was standing in my bedroom smoking a joint, and my buddy was coming over to my house. And he pulls up in the driveway, comes around the back of the house, and I let him in. He's like, "Dude, it stinks out front." I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Bro, I've been here, what, 30 times over the last 3 months, and I've never smelled anything outside the house." But he's like, "It literally smells like it smells like weed, but it smells different, and it is so potent." And I'd put like a gram in probably a 2 gram joint of this shatter. Dude, I was so fucking stoned. I can remember just thinking to myself, like, wow, like almost like the first time I smoked, and I was seasoned at that point.
Wow.
And now we have 50 to 60 brands of pens that you can go buy, and sorting through some of that shit's just such a nightmare. And a lot of it's just low end distillate and with a flavoring in it. Now people are using botanical terpenes. They're like, "No, it's the exact same terpenes as cannabis." And I'm like, nah. That flower is not meant to be combusted, and so its oil has things in it that don't mesh. And so, going from days of getting hash oil from the hippies that you could rub on a cigarette, or the press stuff that we used to get, to now these days there's live resin, there's rosin, there's sift. There's actually a couple of brands in Washington that sell a Moroccan style hash. And I was shocked to see it, dude. And I actually tried some one night, just because we rarely get anything from the store. We'll get, like, my wife likes the pens because she manages a 6-year-old all day, and my daughter's not stupid. She'll be like, "You smell funny," or "I saw you smoking," and we're like, "No, no, 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 no." So the pens she can get away with, but I'll get some BHO dabs from time to time. And I saw this Moroccan style stuff, and then I generally make sift with what I have because I love sift. I'll heat it up and press it out and fold it and press it and fold it and press it and make this cannoli style stuff. And Frenchie and I were friends for quite a while when he was working with TGA and I was, and I made that hash back then, and he's like, "Man, this is so good," and he had a much different technique, old world techniques, but hash, dude, bubble hash, sift. I like rosin, but temple balls and sift and bubble that's still as it is.
That's what I prefer. I mean, I kind of just have a little jar of balls always around. Yep.
Dude, the flavor on that is consistent, and like putting that in a doobie and tasting that hash. Like, there's times I'll put a worm in the middle of a joint, light it up, and again, forget that I did it. Take a couple hits, set it down, walk into the other room, like into the flower room, and then I can smell this like little cloud of hash coming into the room, and I'm like, "Oh, that's right," And that flavor, that was something I learned in Amsterdam, because we would rub the hash oil on our cigarettes back when we used to take a bunch of L and party and eat Molly and mushrooms. Teenagers and 20-year-olds, dude, just heavy. But we went to Amsterdam, and our German buddies were there, and they're like, we have to put hash in the middle of the joint. We make a little worm, and then we roll it up and we smoke it. And I'm like, "Really?" And he's like, "Oh, it's the best." And sure enough, dude, that was the first time I smoked with tobacco too. It's 2006 on the beach in Amsterdam, and I was like, the first couple hits, I felt like, because I'd smoke cigarettes with my brother occasionally because he was a smoker and I wasn't, and I wanted to hang out with my brother. He was 2 years younger and too cool for me, even though I was the older brother. So I'd do anything I could to get some time with him. But we went to Amsterdam and smoked a spliff with hash in the middle, and I was like, I like
Oh
that. And I
no.
burn through
Oh
my sift
no.
so fast, dude. I could sift 2 or 3 plants and that'll keep me going for a while. But then the friends are like, "You got any of that cannoli?" And I'm like, "No, why?" They're like, "Well, I saw you making a whole bunch on the live last night." And I'm like, "Oh, that must have been another Mr. Spliff because I don't have any, fucking lying through my teeth." But good hash goes a long way, dude. And it's part of where Frenchie and I became good friends as we knew knowing each other, and he'd seen some of my work and seen my weed, and he was kind of like becoming a thing at TGA. And it was actually the 2013 Cup that got moved to San Bernardino. It was Sunday night, and I was rolling out a worm, and Frenchie's like, "What are you doing?" I see you don't have any weed out. I was like, "Oh no, I'm just smoking tobacco and hash." He's like, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah, I call it an asshole cigarette." He's like, "Dude, it's my favorite way to smoke." I was like, "Well, come and find me in 15 minutes." So he goes to the bathroom and comes back, and I'm like behind the fence, be away from the booth, because Subcool's like, "Don't fucking smoke tobacco around me." He's like, "I love you, but fuck your spliffs, and I hate smelling it." And I was like, "Totally cool." I always smoke pure joints at the booth. But he's like, "If you want to go have your little fucking tobacco hash cigarette, get the fuck out of here." And I'm like, "Yep." He was nasty about it. That it was Sunday night. We were all tired. And so
Yeah.
Frenchie, like I'm standing behind the fence that's got like the poly liner so you can't see through the chain link. And I hear Frenchie's like, "Where's Spliff?" And so I can hear him say, "Oh, you want to smoke that fucking tobacco thing?" And Frenchie's like, "Yep." So he's on the other side of the fence. If you follow the cloud, and so Frenchie comes out, and I've got this fat ass worm with tobacco and a filter tip and a paper, and he was so excited. He's like, "Nobody smokes like this over here." I was like, "Trust me, I am a fucking lone wolf on this
Mhm.
one." And
Yep.
dude, tobacco and hash, like good sift or good bubble hash or a temple ball rolled out like gram and a half into maybe the size of a cigarette stick and oh, it's not for the weak. If you can't handle nicotine,
No.
don't play it. But it was
No.
after that we became like closer. And he was like, I love that I have a brother in America that I can talk to about
Yep.
smoking hash tobacco cigarettes. And I was like, it's a special high, dude. It's unique. You're definitely like kind of swimming the whole time. You're like, okay, I'm definitely fucked up. So but bubble hash and sift and temple balls, dude. Temple, I only have one friend that makes them, and I can't ever get my hands on enough. And Frenchie would come to the cups, and I'd be like, "How much hash do you have?" And he's like, "Well, I got like 300 grams to sell." I was like, "Didn't you just say 250?" And he's like, "No, I said 300." I'm like, "I want 50 grams." Like, please give me the tempo balls, because that flavor, and like the jar you pulled out, it's that old school hash flavor, not the modern rosin with all the botanical flavors from the live resin. And a lot of people dig that,
Spicy.
and I get it. It's like going to the candy shop of hash, but
Mhm.
I prefer that old world taste because there is nothing like it. It's uniform between I mean, you could take Blue Dream versus Chem Dog, and you're still going to get a relative sift hash flavor. It might have nuances, but it carries that body of flavor that you can't find anywhere else. So, it's part of why I breed the way I do and smoke the way I do, is because it's it's what I like. So, people always tell me, "Oh, you got to breed with this. You got to diversify your menu." I was like, I remember Snoop making a reggae album. Nobody liked it. Not that I'm a big fan of
Snoop
his anyway,
Lion.
but like,
Yeah.
stick
Snoop
with what you
Lion.
know and you love. Because yeah, exactly, Snoop Lion, right? So if you love something, like, people love your music because it's authentically you, and you can create within that sphere, and you have a good handle on it. As soon as you try and change up what you're doing for the public, then it becomes something that, like, sure, you can do it, but do you do it as well as somebody else that's their core flavor? Probably not. And the people that would respond to that flavor are probably going to respond to the nuances that that person that's head over heels about. I don't even like saying this word. Tangi. There, I said it.
There is no middle ground on Tangi. Same like with black licorice. You either love it or you hate it. I've never met a person that's in the middle.
I don't like black licorice, although I love Afghans that have that note. But Tangi is one of those things. Like, again, I worked for Subcool for like almost 4 years. So lemon,
Oh,
orange,
shit.
grape, and cherry. Lemon, orange, grape, and cherry.
Yep.
Over
Yep.
and over and over. And mind you, when I bring my Seattle Sour Kush flower to the events, everybody's like, yes. But then when DNA brought out Tangi in 2013, you know, I can remember everybody was stoked. And dude, there's all these people growing with Mills and Jacks and Peters, and they ain't getting a lot of terps off their flowers. So all of a sudden, there's something that like they can definitively smell, right? And the
Yep.
clementines come out, and this comes out, and you're just like,
Mimosa.
you know, Tangi. Like I made a little short the other day, and I was saying, if Tangi was the only flavor around, would you still smoke? And I was like, I sure as fuck wouldn't. I'd be done, dude, done. I'd bet cannabis is evil.
That
Um,
hardcore. You're like,
so
fuck no.
yeah,
I'm a
dude.
Tangi. I can take Tangi. I can handle it. I like it. I'll admit
Now
it. I
there's
like it.
in dab form, maybe I like something a little sweeter sometimes, but when it comes to flower, as sweet as I get would be cherry pie, blue dream, cotton candy kush, Trinity, you know, things like that. And even then, they're not going to be the first jar I reach for if I've got a bunch. But with that being said, there's some of my friends in the group that are die-hard lovers of Tangi. So if I'm to go out and breed something with Tangi, like, sure, I can like try and build that perfect male, which
Right.
so I did make, I don't even like saying it. I don't even like saying it. I made a cross with Blockberry. We call it lifted citrus. Now there's two cuts of Blockberry. Blockberry is Tropicana Cookies F2 to Black Cherry Punch Mother. And it is definitely got some tangy terps. There's the super boof that washes well, and then there's the breeder's cut of Blockberry that looks more like cookies. So I was past
Okay.
that cut, and my buddy's like, please pollinate it with something. I want to see you do work with this. And I'm like, it's like admitting my wife is right. It's just something I
Oh
don't want to do, even if she is
no.
clearly right. I'm like, no, you're
Yeah.
fucking crazy. So I build the strain that we call Flavor Town. It's straight lemonade sunset sherb with my Dwamish. So it's got menthol and vanilla cookie kush with the lavender cookie of sunset sherb, and then this straight lemonade that's like candy lemon. So when we hit the Blockberry with that, all of a sudden we get back to like almost Agent Orange, where it's fresh
Okay. Yep.
squeezed orange juice, fresh squeezed orange juice with like this candy overtone, and I can tolerate that. I like Tangerine Dream back in the day because it was literally
Yep.
like not tangy, it was a sweet tangerine. Like a Meyer lemon is a dirty form of a lemon, and so I try to stay away from that kind. Like why Dutch Treat was so good is it was screaming candy lemon. It wasn't like some of these other lemon crosses that are, you know, I just don't like Super Lemon Diesel. Back in the day, the Lemon Diesel was fire,
Mm-hmm.
like really good, balanced lemon. But the so when we made the Blockberry cross, I was just like, and it's a phenomenal cross. It washes well, it goes huge, and a lot of people absolutely love it, and they want to tell me about it all the time. And it's like, you know, I won't say what I was going to say, but it's like hooking up with that girl that you shouldn't have when you're younger, and all your friends remind you of it. So, um, you know, and again, it goes back to like breed what you love and what you're good at. Like the one of the first cuts I
Mm-hmm.
was ever passed was Seattle Sour Kush, the Chem 4 headband, and that has dominated my opinion of what fire flavor is. And you know, I have cuts that are more potent than other, but I'm not that dude that rolls a joint to get stoned. I obviously appreciate the effect, but I love smoking weed. I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
it is. Some guys love cigars, some people like their cigarettes, but a fat ass bat of some proper gas, dude.
So would you smoke a fat ass bad proper gas if it was just CBD? Are you into
Uh,
minor cannabinoids? Do you care
I
about them
don't
or work?
indulge as much as I could. You know, when the CBD phase was coming around, it was like anybody that was breeding with ACDC, Charlotte's Web, Harlequin.
Harlequin.
A lot of this stuff was people were trying to breed with it, so they had a CBD strain on the menu, and um, you know, I never really got into it. And hemp is one of those things that is generally they're looking for the derivatives, they're looking for the medicinal side, turning it into oil. So a lot of these hemp fields, like you guys might be buying organically grown hemp CBD products, but if you were to see the material being processed, you might get sick to your stomach because there's a lot of leeway. You know, like when the clear concentrate people came up and they were talking about they
Mm-hmm.
went to a farm as a test and dug up these boxes of weed that had gotten moldy and fucked up. He was like, dude, there was black weed, there was weed with white mold all over it. And as a scientific attempt to clean it up, we did, and we pulled out pounds and pounds of this clear concentrate that had been completely remediated and purged of all of its impurities. And it was like, it was kind of crazy to see that, you know. And at the same time, like the integration of one-to-one hemp or CBD THC stuff was coming out, and so I never really got into that stuff. It's probably a big part of what's missing in my body because a lot of the endocannabinoid system is fed from those micros that come out of CBD and hemp and ruderalis, where the other stuff is more just narcotic, you know. And Sub and I used to talk about the differences that you'd see in a seed pack. There, even though it's just THC breeding, you're still going to see stuff that leans towards that hemp trait. And so before the genetic pool was as established as it was, he was always like, you're looking for smaller males because those smaller males represent the drug trait versus the hemp trait. So you're going to get more potency, more resin, blah, blah, blah. And I don't think that's as true today because, again, the genetic pool is so hybridized that there's just plants that are tough that show those same traits and stuff. So, you know, and by a conversation this long, you guys can tell that there's a lot to what this modern story of cannabis and what's available. And sometimes you got to do deep dives to find what you love. And just because you find some kosher Kush or true OG or some Chem 91 or Dispensary doesn't mean it came from a qualified farm. And the regulations of quality are not really with our physiology in mind. They're just trying to make sure that it passes the screening tests and stuff like that. They could be feeding it fucking, you know,
We
whatever's
don't even want to
legally.
know.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so you know, this is
ugh.
it's a tough industry. And again, we're dealing with something that no other industry really outside of like tobacco and cigars. Our pulmonary, our respiratory system is mainly mucous membrane, and it's very, very sensitive. It's not like ingesting stuff that, like, there's stuff that you can spray on food crop that you could never spray on something you're going to smoke, because the way your
Combustion.
stomach digests and breaks it apart is a whole different system. So this comes back to, like, you know, why we try not to use any sprays and flour, or why we try to, you know, feed appropriately so we get clean ash that doesn't burn hot and has the right clear-minded effect. I mean, you're still going to get stoned, but that weighed down stupid feeling is probably more attributed to poor farming than it is the genetics themselves. So
That's
it's changed a lot,
why
dude. It's definitely changed.
it has, and that's, you know, an important thing I say to people who that is their outlet, or they go to the rec shop to try to find something that works for their body. Is, you know, one, pay attention to like the terpenes and the other things in it, because I think like chemovar or chemotype is going to help you more select the next best one versus the name or the brand.
Right.
But once you find the one that does good for you, try to look at the parents, and then that's where you should start like your grow journey, is like start with those. See, you know, there's actually, and I actually have it on the table because it was the first bowl I loaded. There's only one thing in this Washington rec market that I will look for and always buy, and it's the Hawaiian golden pineapple. I almost was going to ask earlier if Evergreen made it into the hands of Fat Panda, because based off your description, I was like, God, that reminds me of, and I think Evergreen was even the name of it. But anyways,
I let out a lot of seeds, and funny enough, Fat Panda is the only company I know that actually holds the Seattle Sour Kush cut. The guy that I got it from, his gardening partner over like 8 years moved to Spokane, set up a garden, and those two groups became friends, and they shared some cuts. And they even DM'd me back in the day on Instagram. They're like, "So you have the Seattle Sour Kush?" I was like, "Yeah, I know Ryan and Casey." And they were like, "Ah, okay, cool." That was the end of the conversation. Like, I knew the guys that they got it from, and blah blah blah. And And it's tough, like you said, like you're looking for a particular type. Hopefully what they've called it is what it is,
Right.
because you can rename anything you want in Washington. It doesn't matter.
And it
You can have
happens.
under one company, you can have 6 different companies that, one's a white label of somebody
Mhm.
else's gear that you're buying, and then you've got your premium brand and your smalls brand and whatever else. And so, like, I generally tell people, find a brand that you find to be really clean, and then go through their menu and try and find something that really
Mhm.
speaks to you. Like, for instance, Lifted Cannabis is one of those few
Yep.
companies in state that has their garden dialed. Mind you, they're not using the kind of nutrients I'd want, but there is absolutely no sprays, no bullshit, no heavy metals. And so their pens are generally really good. And their dabs are the only ones I buy because it's the only one I don't get a headache and don't feel like shit the next day. And I'll admit, I still love BHO. I don't buy a lot of it, but dude, for $25, I can get a gram of lifted crystals and like the honey crystals. And dude,
Yeah.
both my wife
Believe
and
me, I've
I,
had it.
we got a bunch of friends that make rosin and shit. And I always ask them, "Do you guys make BHO?" And they're like, "Yeah, I just can't sell it." I'm like, "You can to me, motherfucker." So
You
um,
can to me.
yeah, that's how it goes. And finding that sweet spot for stuff you love is part of what got me into growing, because my buddies would constantly have different flavors that they were, they had like 7 or 8 different things they grew on the regular, and it always alternated. And so we were always trying to save a little bit because that one wouldn't come back for a year. And then when we
Mhm.
started growing and we found a few flavors we liked, I just started chasing that, dude. It's like when I worked with Sub, I loved the cheese. I got to smoke some of his cheese at the first School of Dank Dioxide had some. I was like, what the fuck is this? And he was like, it's the mother of cheesequake. And I was in love with cheesequake. It was the first TGA strain I grew, and I was like, okay, that's that flavor. And so we started growing Dairy Queen and other cheese crosses, and then eventually we got into a wide variety of things. And I remember the first time I grew out some gear from TH Seeds, and I'd met Terry, Adam Dunn's partner in Amsterdam, at the
Mhm.
shop there, which is this tiny little office. It's like maybe 30 feet deep and 10 feet wide, and got a table, and they sell genetics. And we got something called De Perps. And dude, that bitch was so
Seen that too.
fucking loud. Oh my God, dude. We'd grow one plant, you could smell it for a mile down the street, even with like
Damn.
triple stage carbon filters. If there was a little
Damn.
hole in the wall that like the smallest ant in the world had chewed through your wall, all of a sudden that smell was everywhere in the neighborhood, dude. And that was the kind of sweet stuff that we were totally into. The green cracks, the Maui Wowies,
Mhm.
the Dutch treats, the super silver haze. That was a lot of what we started with. And then finally, I just worked my way towards gas because I had the Seattle Sour Kush. And then when I got OG and Forum cookies a couple of years later, I was like, oh, like, oh, there's that kind of stuff. And there was within the cookies world, we boys, and we were trying to get them girls, and we found that them girls that smoked weed loved cookies. Like they would smell cookies, and like
The
they're
aphrodisiac.
closing the door. It's like one of those things. And we weren't trying to get them stoned to get on them, but we were already in that situation. If you had cookies, bro, they were like, fuck yes.
Yes.
So it's interesting how men and women prefer different things. My wife and I, luckily, we really love the same thing. And I've got like 80 different cuts. I would say probably 40% of them are clone onlys. Some of it might be rarer seed stock that's very sparse these days. But out of everything I have, all she ever wants is Seattle Sour Kush. It's all she wants. And this is 15 years later. And
Damn.
I'm the same way. I'm very lucky to have found somebody that
Yeah.
is on the exact same page. Because if she loved Tangi,
That's grounds for divorce.
don't you kiss me with that Tangi breath, you bitch.
Yeah,
You
right.
know,
Go,
so
go. That's hilarious.
oh man.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got any other questions? We could go all day, dude. I'm here,
Yeah.
and this is,
I know.
some of the times when we do the lives, it's nice because you get the chat asking questions, but then it also
Yeah.
just tails
Can go
off in all
anywhere.
sorts of directions. And you know, and we can do more
Maybe.
installments for sure. I love talking to you. It's very easy, and we have similar. We're almost the same age, and we've been through it at the same time, and got to watch this industry explode. I mean,
Yeah. I
Have
would
you
love to
ever
do.
met, do you know who Uptown Grow Lab is? An
I do
older dude
not.
named Jay. He's probably like 60, he's probably 65 now. Older gentleman,
Okay.
short white hair. And he used to do YouTube videos and he was a decent gardener. But
Okay.
this dude has one of the most insane coffee table books I've ever seen in my life when it relates to cannabis. Like,
Really? What is it?
dude, it's Uptown Grow Lab. I think it's called like the Kitchen, Cannabis Kitchen or something like that. It's his first
Okay.
installment. But if you look up Grow Lab Jay, he did a second book which he partnered with a dispensary and they wanted to make it like a lot about them. And he's like, man, fuck my second book. Now, mind you, it's not like modern pictures of cannabis where they're just iced out in 100 light rooms,
Right.
all observing VPD, and they've got all these controllers. And, there's like two guys that run a 100 light garden, and all they ever do is defoliate and push the dosatron button. Um, so these are like kind of like old school strains and some of this other stuff that is lost, but he does great detail and he goes over different kinds of hash and growing methods. And, um, it's a really cool book. I think it's
I
called Cannabis Kitchen, but it's
I
by
will.
Uptown Grow Lab.
I'll look
And
for
it's a
that because I
great
do
book.
love books. I
Well, and
love
it's like
books.
back in the day, Subcool had the Dank and the Dank 2.0. And
Oh, I've got those in the other room.
dude, I am still trying to get a copy of the original Dank. I lost mine. And
Expensive.
all of ours are signed, because I was working with Sub at the time, and so he and Jilly wrote these big, long, lovely messages inside. But I never had a copy of the first one, and he didn't have except for like two at his house, and he's like, "I'm not giving them up." And I had gotten one dude that was going to trade me a cut for his copy of the Dank, and then he was like, "Dude, I can't let it go." So I've never ever had that book. I've seen it at his house. I've read through it, but these are like there was nothing else like the Dank and the Dank 2.0. I mean, they were these almost like the Garfield books, right? Elongated with
Yeah.
big, beautiful, glossy pictures and um man, memories, memories, memories. Do you know who Sonny Chiba is?
Yes.
So Sonny
Yes.
Chiba worked with Subcool, and that was his weed name. Um, he worked with Sub like 2006, 2008, and bred Astro Boy and Double Purple Doja, and he really loved the Anoxanthin purple influence in cannabis.
Mm.
And he's got a bunch of pictures, and part of that book he did some of the authoring for different articles and stuff. And I'd heard the name, I'd seen it in the book, and didn't know who he is, and Sub didn't really talk about him very much, and not because there was anything. They just went on different paths. And I
Mm.
was working at the Denver 2015 Cup with Gage, and this dude comes up to the booth and he's like, "You're Spliff, right?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You got a couple minutes just to chat?" And I was like, "Yeah, for sure." So I come out of the booth and he's like, we shake hands. He's like, "My name's Sonny Chiba. Have you ever heard of me?" And I was like, "Yeah, dude, for sure. You worked with Sub." He's like, "Yeah," and like so immediately we just have this like we hit it off and we talked for like an hour. And he was talking about when they were putting those books together and how exciting it was to like bring something literature permanent, something you could have on the table and people come over and they're just like, "Whoa, all this cool looking weed." And it wasn't like it is today. I mean, there was, when I started YouTube, there was me, Coma, Sub LBC, Sub, uh Remo. There
Mm-hmm.
was like 10 guys. When I came to YouTube, I was kind of one of the newcomers and I grew real quickly because of Sub, but like there just wasn't the volume of media that there is these days on TikTok, on X, on YouTube, on Instagram. I
No.
mean,
Yeah. Not
Facebook,
even
there's all
close.
these weed groups. And even on Reddit, there's just nonstop pictures of properly grown. I mean, maybe not the nutrients I'd want, but like photo finish style flowers. And it wasn't like you could just get online and go through all these blogs. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, sure, there was roll it up and grow whatever, overgrow, which I was
Yeah.
never on because I was not. I got my first computer 2 years ago. So the fact that I know how
Damn.
to do anything online is a huge
Yes.
feat.
Yes.
um, but days like that where there was these little grow books, like I mentioned, I was in Amsterdam at the DNA seed shop that's just down the street from the gray area, and I got their catalog, and it was like a 20-page catalog with all these strains and descriptions and flowering times, and it was just like, like somebody's actually made media in page form that I can take home, and it's like this special thing to me. And I'd had that original DNA catalog for fucking 20 years. And a buddy of mine is obsessed with DNA, right? They've been around
Yep.
forever, big name, and he's part of their seed subscription. So he ordered some of my seeds one day, and I sent him my DNA catalog, and he's like, dude, this has got to be one of the coolest things I've ever gotten in my life. Says right on it, 2006 Amsterdam DNA seed catalog, and then at the bottom it says
Awesome.
English version. And
Yep.
because
Yep.
there's
Yep.
German, Dutch, Spanish, French, and
Yep.
so I've got a bunch of these little things. I don't know where. I still have all my original TGA hats. I got my TGA
That's
team
nice.
shirts. I've got my Subcool TGA team jacket with my name on it. And like,
Damn.
when we were working at Gage, we made all this cool stuff. I made bamboo jars. I made bamboo spliff tubes. We made
Oh,
grinders with
wow.
the logo on it. And like, people went crazy over that shit because it just wasn't mass production yet. Like brands were, branding themselves and selling t-shirts, but nothing that was like iconically weed. And we had legitimate bamboo jars with liners that slid apart. I had big jars, small jars, and the blunt tubes. We called them blunt tubes because they were king size spliff tubes, but nobody knew what a spliff was, and nobody rolled over 2 grams at that time. And
No.
mine, they either said Mr. Spliff of Cannabis or Gage Green group, like embossed into the bamboo. I mean, cool shit that we still hold a few of them. And um, these days, it's just a whole business, right? It's not as special as it used to be because it was fewer and far between. So, um,
It's special to us,
well,
though. Special to the
yeah,
collectors. Like I collected all those
right.
old catalogs, and I'm not in the room with all of my stuff, but I do have some of my books in here. But this is probably,
Yep.
you mentioned the Indoor Sun Shop earlier, uh,
Yep.
compiled by Mr. Murphy Stevens, and this is, talk about gnarly looking plants. This is, very early. I mean, look at those buds. Like those are the buds that you're putting
100%,
in
dude.
there.
Age stuff
So
from last year's outdoor, and even
yeah,
some of the, we all saw and it might not
huge
be
in
a
the
popular
setups and
opinion,
stuff.
but some of these people that were writing books that were the most popular authors, I question who they were working for on the inside because um, I'm not going to drop any names, but there's definitely some CIA plants within our industry that have been here for the last 30 years. And then there was the people that were just enthusiasts. Like one of my favorite authors is Mel Frank,
Hmm.
just really good insight without being overly sciencey, just a really solid look at the plant and grown so many land race varieties. And back then weed came from where it could grow. That's why, like in
Right.
Washington, the outdoor we got either came from the east side of the state, Southern Oregon, or the Bay Area, And if it didn't come from there, it was too much of a headache to cultivate. The money wasn't there, the quality of flower wasn't there. And then in 1980, the NFL decided they wanted to be able to broadcast games at night. So they tasked some science boys to make a metal halide metal arc lamp. And then they started making them smaller for street lights. And some dude was like, I bet I could grow plants under that. And then, dude, I've seen people scaling street lights back in the day, and they're going after a sodium bulb that's 6 years old, totally
Damn.
faded, still provides light. But so the industry has gone a long way. I mean, I even remember induction
Yeah.
lighting, like these large fluorescent tubes that were all linked, and it was
Hmm.
like the new thing. And then HPS came out, metal halide came out, and LED came out, and plasma lighting came out, and now under canopy lighting's coming out. And I'm like, oh,
Another thing for us to buy. But
yeah, dude,
yeah, yeah. Let's
crazy.
get into let's get into that and some of the the more fun conspiracies that we have, because this industry is kind of full of them, and it's just like bro
Yeah,
science. Not all of it is fake. So let's maybe do
yeah,
that for part two. I'm gonna get a little hungry here.
dude,
So
we've been on for almost 4.5 hours.
damn.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
dude.
Well,
Time
that was easy
flies, dude.
conversation.
Yeah, it's like one of those things, and we can we can go through, and it would be hard for us to rewatch it all and write notes. But what we can do for a part two is like maybe write down 10 bullet point subjects each. I'm sure some of them will cross over, and we can kind of do that. And then if we wait like say 4 or 5 days or a week or whatever, we can go through the comments and see what people are saying and what they
That's a
if they
good
want to
idea.
have us discuss some particular thing. For those of you that have made it this far in the video, good for you. That's awesome. That's a
Yeah.
long time to commit, and you might have to watch in a couple segments, but this is post 4 hour mark in the video. So what I'll do is we will set aside say 20 or 30 packs, and
Wow.
what can we do? I mean, I guess people could
You know,
slide forward to this part of the video, but if you've watched the video to this point and you comment 4 hours and 30 minutes, we'll put you in a giveaway for the next show, and we'll give away some seeds. Like I got a bunch of gear, so anytime I can give you packs to give out on your show, and I'm
that would be
more than
good.
happy to do that because
Yep.
I got a bunch of gear, and I put seeds in people's hands constantly because sometimes if they don't know you or don't know your work, it's a good way to get your foot in the door. And
Hmm.
so it's not just giving away, sometimes it's helping, get a little push on the business. But I love to give seeds away.
Well,
We do
thank you.
duck races on our lives, and taking care of the people and creating fun in the video is a big part of it. We have the capability to do so, and so let us love on you. This is a good place to do it, and I can't wait for the next one because clearly, we're like those 14-year-old kids that just discovered 007 Goldeneye, and we're spending a
Oh
weekend
my
doing this, bro.
God.
You know?
Yes, dude. We're not even leaving. We're investing in Pampers and fucking takeout.
Oh,
Yeah.
just like the
Awesome.
days of Mountain Dew and Molson Ice in a can and sitting around being just young kids stoned. And, I played that game professionally for a few years in the sense that,
Oh, jeez.
my brother and I were entrepreneurs and we were selling weed out of my mom's apartment like nobody's business. And we would literally sit with the phone between us playing GoldenEye. We'd get home after school. As soon as
Yeah.
we walked in the door, we posted up. And dude, there would be traffic coming through that apartment complex. And at one point, management called my mom and they're like, "We think your sons are selling weed." And being the kids we were, we went down to the office and said, "You better watch what the fuck you're saying to my mom." And like that was dumb. That was real dumb, to make that kind of threat. But we cleaned up our act and we started meeting people at the park. But dude, we would sit there play Goldeneye, trying to beat the silo in a minute 18 seconds because that's how you got that little special
Oh my
trophy.
God.
And the phone would ring, and before it even get through the first ring, what? That's how we answered the phone. What? And then if
What
it was
is
one of
it?
my mom's friends, she'd be like, "What do you mean? What?" And it would be like, "Oh, sorry. We were just on the phone with a friend and we thought they called back," and she's like, "Oh man." So yeah, it's an
Pre-caller
interesting thing.
ID days.
Yeah, dude. I mean, dude, I remember when I was 7, my dad worked for a tech company and they just put out video call through fax lines. And it was
Oh,
choppy
geez.
as shit. But I remember the first time we talked to his business partner in Japan over this little 4-inch LCD monitor type thing. It looked like
Wow.
uh, you know, like an old Mac, like the old square Mac
Hmm.
computers.
Hmm.
And that was like, wow. And now here we are in, 2025, just linking. And mind you, we're closer than some, but we're on video sharing and a couple of Gavin kids just talking. And thank you to Gabby for, suggesting that we
Yeah.
get in contact because for those of you that don't know, we just met. I just met Gabby a couple of months ago, and I've heard both the names more than once. Um, but for the as the market expands, your circle of clientele shrinks, no matter what, because there's
Mhm.
just more options, and the people that love you stick with you. But for another breeder or somebody selling clones or in the business or whatever, to share and promote another name like Gabby's done for me, and we've done each other good favors, but that's like the ultimate sacrifice in this modern industry is putting somebody else in front of your clientele. And sure, it's awesome to have interviews and stuff, but it's just one of those things where if you sell seeds or clones and legitimately somebody sees something that the new guys has, they're not going to go just shop there, but anytime they buy, they're not buying with you. And so it's like one of those really loving, graceful things to share your audience. And big shout out to Gabby. He and I hit it off, and it helps guys like us being somebody in the industry and having a little bit of history or weight, coming together. At least there's not like this imbalance, but um, this would never happen without Gabby. So
No,
Big love to
no.
Gabby for being an awesome dude, and he would prefer it that we call him a legendary mensch. He doesn't want to be called a legend. He just wants to be called a good mensch. And I said, "Well, can I call you a legendary mensch?" And he was like, "That works." So,
That's
you
nice.
know,
What a match. Okay.
yeah, it's been a cool
That's
time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I
So,
do appreciate him for, again, or just kind of prodding both of us to connect. I'm glad that we have. And, it's the old saying again, I'm from a fishing village. A high tide raises all boats. I like to see people succeed because I
yep,
know that when good people help others succeed, everybody wins. And whether that's even talking about us as having seeds or having clones, if the person, this is what's most important to me, if the person finds the medicine that they are after from you
yep,
because I don't offer it, I'm fucking happy. And
dude,
what you kind of
100%.
offer isn't my strong point either. So
Right.
that's kind of even better. And yeah, next time we did touch on some of your genetics. I do a seed collector show. This may be fun because this is usually something that we could maybe do live and we could actually maybe
Yep.
do giveaways because I always do giveaways. But if we arrange with my buddy Dave, we do the seed collector show. Usually we just sit there and we show off new packs or we talk about breeders, basically try to introduce people to
Yep.
different breeders and different strains. It would be fun
Awesome.
to have you come on and talk about your stuff and amidst all of that. So maybe that's what we do next time is we do do a seed collector
That would
show
be
and just,
awesome.
yeah,
Then that's like what's so necessary in this day and age with people losing pages. You talk about title situation with boats. The boat that's by itself is going to get its ass kicked compared to the boats that are in proximity
yeah,
with buoys. Those
this is
boats weather the
true.
storm way better, and it's good to be connected to people because we all have ebb and flow of financial stress or success, and when we're together, there's different things that can be unlocked together that couldn't be done on your
Yeah.
own. And
Yeah.
an example, I used to sell Chem 91 all the time. I would charge what I charged for the cut, and then I hear that Gabby's giving Chem 91 away with every clone purchase. So I told people flat out, I will never sell Chem 91 again. If you want it, go see my homeboy Gabby. And he's like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "Dude, not only do you do TC and everything's, mine's just as clean or
Mhm.
whatever, but you're giving it away. So if I care about the people in my circle and I'm trying to sell them a cut that they could go and buy one of his legendary cuts and get Chem 91 for free, then like, do I really care about people?" And it's not the most extraordinary thing I've done, but like this is how we take care of the people that take care of us, is leading you honestly to waters that you want. So,
I
um, this has been an awesome conversation, man. We got dude, I'll have to send you some of my gummies that my buddy makes. We'll have to eat gummies on the live.
Okay.
I
Challenge
call them motor
accepted.
mouth gummies. They're
Oh
not like,
boy.
so he makes rosin and then he turns the rosin into nanotech solution. Then he mixes
Mhm.
gelatin, sugar, and dye, not dye, but strawberry juice coloring. And he makes these bears, and they're 30 milligrams of hash rosin, 30 milligrams.
Damn.
One gummy
Okay.
definitely gets you, two gets you. When I eat three gummies on the live, it takes about an hour to kick in, and there's like 2 minutes where I'm like adjusting myself in my seat. I'm like, oh, definitely overwhelmed. And then after that, it's like deep introspective motor mouth spliff, dude, where people are like, oh, he's on the gummies, So we'll have to do that, and it'll make for like we eat them an hour before the show, and then when you and I both acknowledge we're fucked up, that's when we hit record, and it just provides for like unique conversation. And the gummies are great.
Oh,
We'll have to do a smoking episode where we're smoking doobies and um yeah, dude,
that'll
there's a
be
lot of stuff we could cover.
hilarious.
I think we love cannabis similarly, and that's a really good thing too, because it's not just about getting high or flexing a stack of cash.
No.
It's a lot more than that, and we're all trying to heal the 5-year-old inside. I might
Mhm.
be 45, but I mean, it's why we go to the fetal position when we're hurt, is we're very aware of where we came from. And we all got feelings, we all have things. And this is why I was talking earlier about vulnerability and challenge your
Yep.
own personal vulnerability. With my friends, I started, and it stemmed from Josh at Dragonfly Earth Medicine. One year we were at the country fair and I hugged people, but I had been through so much in the last 6 months, and it took us forever to get down there. It was our first year doing this. We were going to be there for a month. We had to be prepared, and we get there late this first day that we were supposed to work with the crew, and I've got carpenter hands. I can build shit. So he tasked us with a project, and then we knocked off for a few hours. And at the end of that, he came up to me and he's like, I'm really, really happy you made it. And I think this is going to be an awesome experience. And we're just really pleased to share this time with you. I was like, dude, this guy's like real. And he goes to give me a hug. And I give him the hug and I give him the double tap and I go to let go. And he's like very much still there. So I'm like, okay, we're hugging for a little bit longer. And I'm like hugging him and he starts rubbing my back a little bit and he's just talking a little bit here and there. But the dude hugged me like for 5 minutes straight.
Wow.
And there was multiple times where I was like, oh, are we done? And I didn't understand the intention behind another dude who's mentally a 5-year-old like all of us looking at another 5-year-old like, I can tell you're hurting.
Yeah.
And so from that moment forward in my life, I really started to like challenge how I addressed my friends, right? Like being willing to be vulnerable and tell them to their face that I love you, dude. I've had a lot of friends that I told that and their response was, thank you. It's like, I wasn't looking for them to say it back, but they were like, and Spliff's all hugging me emotionally. And then after time, if I didn't hug them, they'd be like, what's wrong? So it's
Right.
like building that ability to be vulnerable and honest and
Well,
creates a real person, creates real connections. And I look forward to continuing to build a relationship. It's been really fun today.
yeah, I 100% agree. And everybody has different definitions of it, but that's what I define as being real. We all have
Yeah,
our
it's
vulnerabilities. Just be real, dude. Nobody's bulletproof.
yeah,
Everybody's situation is different. And even,
yep,
like, yeah, everybody's situation is different. But yeah, we're all vulnerable. So don't act like you're not. Just be cool, be humble. You can learn from the next person, or maybe just
yep.
get lifted up, Sometimes
And
things
that's
don't have answers.
and that's the toughest thing about being alive. And especially we got male and female viewers, but as being a dude, sometimes you live in this world of expected rigidity and you don't engage. And I'm not talking about getting together with your boys and having crying parties and watching fried green tomatoes,
Not at all.
but if
Be real
not
though.
at
Be
all,
real, right?
no,
Just be
but
real, right? It's
yeah.
cool.
And learning yourself comes with a lot of that. So, I'm far from mastering myself, but I know what I love, and generally speaking, that's people. And mind you, I'm also one of those guys that on my off days, I'm like, fuck everybody. But generally speaking, I love people, and I love being a guy that can share and tell my story and give seeds out. And maybe the next time we even give out a cut, because it's easy to bless people when you got a deep library, and you know, um, and we'll have to figure out something that you really love. I would assume that you would love to smoke Santa Cruz Blue Dream again.
I would. I really
So fire.
would.
Yeah,
I
I'll finish that.
my my
It's so fire.
I would be ecstatic. My old boss at the dispensary I worked at, she always called me basic, and I'm like, I'm basic as hell. I order cheese pizza and I like Blue Dream. So bring it.
Yeah, 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 dude. Like universally awesome things, like and that's back to the basic breeding and stuff. So I hold on to all the heritage cuts is because they're that time travel. Back when there was such a thing as Winchell's Donuts. Oh man,
Yes.
dude, we're
Yeah.
just the right age to like remember all the stuff back when Toys R Us, when we were kids, was actually a big fucking deal, dude. You'd walk into Toys R Us,
Yeah.
all the way to the ceiling, giant racks of toys. GI Joes, if you wanted them, there was 700 different GI Joes there. Every car, everything. You went to the Ninja Turtle area, you were like, oh,
Dude. Yep.
cowabunga. So, we'll bring back some of that vibe, and we'll have to just build interviews and get more people and shoot the shit. And
Get
yeah,
a
you'll have to come and do a oh
Kmart blue
god,
light special.
blue light
Blue light
special.
special.
Oh
Oh,
my god, dude.
bringing me
There was
back.
a Kmart not too far from me, and I can remember like it has changed a lot. That is for sure. You know what's funny is I was just talking about this the other day. I went to the Breeders' Ball in Michigan a few years ago, and my buddy Chris, the chronic connoisseur, when I got there, he's like, "I got a really special gift for you." I'm like, "Oh yeah, what's that?" Now I smoke spliffs, and he's like, "You got an ashtray?" I was like, "No, I don't." He's like, "Well, hey, I've got this little."
Oh, get the fuck out. And that's probably like you can bend it. It's the thin metal like type. Yes, that is dude, classic right there.
So I've got a few things like that that are really
Wow.
special. I'll bring out. I've got this one seed separator from back in the day. I bought it from a guy.
Really?
Unfortunately, he's passing away at the country fair, so he brought all of his hippie wares. I got a Woody Woodpecker paper printout painted like full on from like the late 80s, dope as shit.
Nice.
But I got this thing that's called the Urbanator, and you put your weed in this little wheel, and then it closes on both sides, and you spin the wheel, and all
Okay.
the weed falls out, but the seeds stay inside. And it's from like the 70s or 80s. It's called the Weedinator, and it's this tiny little box thing that's just so old school. And so there's a lot of cool shit like that that we can show off and talk about a million stories. And this is where we need to write them down, because I'm sure like I
Good.
keep a little thing like this in my car and different places. It's like a little binder book, and
Yep.
I write down ideas because they'll come. You'll have a great idea, and then someone will call you, and you're like, fuck, what was I thinking about? It was life changing. It could have been that thought that made you $1 million. And it's out there in the ether somewhere getting attacked by a mosquito, and you're over there like, oh, fuck. So, you know,
I do that. I love the
yeah.
notes.
So we probably both need to eat. And I know
Yep.
neither one of us have had a chance to pee or have more coffee or drink water. And let's see, it's been
We're at the
almost,
bottom of both, so that
yeah,
means we're at the
dude.
top of the other.
My coffee cup looks like that. It's yeah, there's nothing in it.
It's
But
done,
5 hours, dude. It's 4 hours and 46 minutes. Like flew by. Flew by, dude.
dude.
Really good time.
Pleasure meeting you. Yeah, pleasure meeting
For
you.
sure.
Shout out Gabby. Thank you for getting us to do this.
For
I
sure,
guess we
dude.
wrap it with everybody watching in chat. Guys, questions, comments, let us know what you'd like to talk about next time. Let us know what you want to see on the Seed Collector Show. And don't forget, all of Mr. Spliff's contact information is right down in the show notes. So scroll down, click, connect directly, and the website will be up soon, but the link is still going to be there. So I guess that's all I got to say for today. Anything else you want to close it up with before we
Yeah, I
head
would just
out?
say if you're looking to find me, Instagram goes back and forth with me getting pages deleted, but my Twitter X account is Mr. Spliff of Cannabis. My YouTube is Mr. Spliff of Cannabis. I've got the website is mrspliffofcannabis.com, which will always have updated information on where I'm at as far as social media. We have clones available now. Most of it's cut to order. We'll put seeds up, but we'll do a bunch of giveaways. And if you guys have you don't want to type it all out in the comments, send an email to us, mrspliffofcannabis@gmail.com. And if you got show notes or something that you would like us to like deep dive into, or a subject that we didn't talk about, or if you want to know more about when we smuggled weed from Netherlands to Germany during the World Cup.
Epic
What a good
legends,
claim,
dude.
dude.
I hope there's
So
still like people telling that story. I imagine there is over there. Be like, man, you remember that one time these dumbasses
I
overnight
was
saved
back
the
in
whole day.
2010. I went back. So the World Cup was in 2006 when we did that. I went back in 2010 or 2008 and then 2010. And I went to the sports betting place in 2010. Dude, I got 1 foot inside the door and they're like, Mike. And I was like, that's right, dude. And they sat me down, fed me dinner, talked. We drank all night. I mean, and it was crazy too, because the guy I was with was just kind of like he was just a nice guy. He wasn't a thug dude at
Right.
all. And he's like, you know these people? I was like, oh yeah, we go way back, And he's like, who the fuck are you? I was like, dude, I'm just a guy in
Yeah.
situational circumstance. That's all it is. It's just, some people remember crazy shit. So with that, dude, it's been awesome. I'm gonna go and play with my daughter and eat some dinner and talk to the wife, and we will definitely reconnect. I would say this is one of the most consistent long interviews where we just had a lot to say, and it only gets better from here. So thank you for having me. To all of those of you who are watching, thank you for spending the time. And if you made it this far, you are a super fan, and we greatly appreciate you. So right on.
Legends. All right, guys, take it easy and have a good day, everybody. See you
Be
next
well.
time.
Westport.